Chapter 695. Long Fei Yi hadn't even asked who had Grand Concubine Yi before the young woman confessed. Her threats were full of confidence. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi still treated her like air and ignored her. Even Lady Lang Yu felt embarrassed for the young woman. She chuckled. Of course she can. But I don't know if Your Highness Duke of Qin's rewards are higher than hers. Is a city of daughters enough? Long Fei Yi said loftily, as if he was rewarding her. Lady Lang Yu was furious. Long Fei Yi, what do you mean by this? Kill her and hand over Grand Concubine Yi. Then your lordship can consider sparing the city of daughters. Otherwise, bear the consequences. Long Fei Yi warned. How much of a joke would it be if news of someone breaking into his estate, killing 100 shadow guards, and kidnapping Grand Concubine Yi spread? How many people would set their sights on the Duke of Qin's estate? After all, the Jianghu was a land of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were plenty of unexpected dangers. He had to make the City of Daughters pay the price as a warning to the restless people in the Jianghu. Although he hadn't reached Celestial Mountain yet, he didn't mind destroying the City of Daughters first. Cloud Realm Continent's Jianghu would have some liveliness first. Lady Lang Yu sucked in a cold breath. Long Fei Yi, your tone is too arrogant. Today, this lady will teach you how to take responsibility for your words. Lady Lang Yu was about to unsheath her sword when the young woman stopped her. What did you promise me? Did you forget? Lady Lang Yu had indeed forgotten. She'd been driven mad by Long Fei Yi's arrogance. Don't worry, this lady is only teaching him a lesson so he knows propriety. The young woman gripped Lady Lang Yu's hand tightly as she muttered, Lady Lang Yu, you want to try breaking our agreement? Do you believe that I'll reveal the truth? Do you want to ruin the City of Daughters' reputation? What was the truth? The truth was that it wasn't the young woman who'd hired Lady Lang Yu, but Lady Lang Yu who'd kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi to make a deal with the young woman. The City of Daughters was an assassin. They would first accept a deal before making a move. They would sit and wait for the customer to come to them, not make a move before making a deal. If this matter was spread out, the City of Daughters would lose its value. It would be despised by the people of Jianghu, especially Liberty City, who would definitely laugh at it. Only then did Madame Lang Yu calm down. She said coldly to Long Fei Yi, if you want to do business with me, sure, but you'll have to finish this deal first. After saying that, she retreated behind the young woman. The young woman finally regained some of her employer's face. Cold, she asked, Long Fei Yi, didn't we agree that you would come alone and bring the profound frost sword in exchange for her? What do you mean by that? What, you don't want to see Grand Concubine Yi? Only then did Long Fei Yi's gaze fall on the woman. Anyone could see the disgust in his eyes. How do you know that the sword in this king's hand is not the profound frost sword? Long Fei Yi wasn't questioning her, but asking a question of his own. It was true that the sword he brought today wasn't the profound frost sword, but it was very similar in appearance. Unless one was familiar with the weapon, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The profound frost sword was one of the sacred swords of Celestial Mountain. How many people in this world could recognize it? Han Yunqi narrowed her eyes. She knew who this woman was. Truly, disgusting. Long Fei Yi raised his sword and aimed it at the young woman's face. He wanted to tear through her veil, but the young woman unsheathed her sword as well. At the same time, Madame Lang Yu did the same. The two of them faced off against Long Fei Yi while Long Fei Yi protected Han Yunqi with one hand. It had to be said that Long Fei Yi was at a complete disadvantage from the start. The young woman seemed to be injured, but her sword skills were still formidable. Madame Lang Yu, on the other hand, was an expert on the same level as Long Fei Yi. Soon enough, Madame Lang Yu and the young woman split up to attack Long Fei Yi from both sides. Long Fei Yi had been on the defensive the entire time. Half of his attention was on defense, while the other half was on protecting Han Yunxi. So your Highness Duke of Qin is a playboy as well. Madame Lang Yu taunted as she attacked. Long Fei Yi blocked her slashes with his sword, giving her the chance to use all of her martial arts to suppress Long Fei Yi. Her goal was obvious, to pin down Long Fei Yi and give the young woman a chance to kill Han Yunxi. It had to be said that Long Fei was completely suppressed this time. With one hand holding Han Yunxi and the other gripping his sword, he had no way to break free from Lady Lang Yu's pressure. Besides Zhang Qiuzi, Madame Lang Yu was his second martial arts rival. Seeing this, the young woman rejoiced. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Her sword swerved to the side to stab Han Yunxi. Although the young woman was excited, she was still on guard against Han Yunxi's sudden attack. After all, she'd already suffered a loss. She paid close attention to Han Yunxi's mouth, hands, and feet, ready to dodge the poison needles at any time. Actually, she could have dodged the last time as well, but she was caught off guard and lost her footing. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been seriously injured. As expected, Han Yunxi spat out a poison needle. With a wave of her hand, she shot out multiple more, all of which the young woman easily dodged. She laughed mockingly and said, "Han Yunxi, with your little tricks, no one would even look at you if you went to juggle." Boring. Han Yunxi narrowed her eyes and didn't answer. Instead, she kept releasing poison needles, which the young woman dodged one by one. Suddenly, she knocked aside the incoming needles with a clang and stabbed her sword towards Han Yunxi's heart. At this critical moment, Long Fei Yi suddenly let go of his sword and turned around to carry Han Yunxi out of the way. No one expected Long Fei Yi to let go of his sword. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi dodged, but the young woman didn't stop her sword from stabbing forward. Neither did Madame Lang Yu. Thus, the young woman's sword went for Madame Lang Yu's, while Madame Lang Yu's sword went for the young woman. Madame Lang Yu had just used all of her strength. If she stopped now, she'd only hurt herself. Time was of the essence, so she could only do her best to change directions and keep going forward. The young woman was able to retract her sword, and she had indeed retracted it. But, at the same time, Madame Lang Yu's sword pierced her abdomen. Everything happened in a split second. "Get out of the way." Madame Lang Yu didn't even have time to shout. Blood, like bright red vines, spread out from the young woman's waist. Her pure white dress bloomed like enchanting flower petals. The young woman touched her wound and was horrified. She stared blankly at Madame Lang Yu, not knowing what to do. "I didn't injure her vitals. She won't die." Although it had been an accident, Lady Lang Yu was still familiar with her sword just then. As she spoke, she pulled the young woman behind her to protect her before dodging to the side to avoid Long Fei's whip. Madame Lang Yu glanced at Long Fei Ye's sword on the ground and said coldly, "Despicable." It turned out that Long Fei Yi wanted to use a whip, not a sword. No wonder as a swordsman, he threw away his treasured sword so easily. The young woman regained her senses. There was a deep cut on her waist, and blood was flowing out non-stop. While Madame Lang Yu was protecting her, she decisively tore her sleeve and wrapped it around her waist to stop the bleeding. "Call the others out. They'll definitely be able to restrain Long Fei Yi," the young woman said in a low voice. She wouldn't be able to take this lying down if she didn't kill Han Yunxi. "Back off to the side. I'd like to see just how capable Long Fei is today." Lady Lang Yu was thoroughly enraged by Long Fei. She didn't believe that Long Fei Yi could be a match for her while protecting Han Yunxi. She wasn't the city lord of the City of Daughters for nothing. Earlier, Long Fei Yi had merely taken advantage of a loophole. The young woman knew that she would become a burden to Madame Lang Yu in her current situation. A complicated look flashed across her eyes as she said in a low voice, "Don't kill him. Just make sure he can't control Han Yunxi." She knew that if Madame Lang Yu became serious, she would hurt Long Feiyi. If Long Feiyi gave up on Han Yunxi, he would be a match for Madame Lang Yu. If he didn't, he would only be injured. Seeing how Long Feiyi was so protective of Han Yunxi, she was already filled with resentment. So what if he got hurt? The young woman decisively retreated to the side. Madame Lang Yu used her ultimate move. She separated a sword from the sword in her hand. One sword became two swords. She held two swords in each hand and faced Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi. Dual sword combination. "I've finally witnessed it," Long Feiyi said. The dual sword combination could only be achieved by two people, but Madame Lang Yu could do it with two hands. This was her own creation. Long Feiyi had heard about it a few times from Master Kenzo. Even Master Kenzo admired it. Han Yunxi was puzzled. She kept staring at Madame Lang Yu's two swords. She wondered how the two swords fit together without falling off. There was nothing wrong with the blades. There should be a mechanism in the hilt, right? What's going on? Long Feiyi and Madame Lang Yu had already started fighting. Han Yunxi leaned against Long Feiyi's chest as if she was detached from the world. She focused on the mystery of the dual sword combination. "You haven't even tasted it. How can you call this experience?" Madame Lang Yu laughed and attacked with both swords. Long Feiyi immediately retreated and swung his whip at Madame Lang Yu's sword. Madame Lang Yu threw her sword away to avoid his whip. The sword flipped in the air and hit a nearby tree trunk. She used the momentum to fly towards Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi's backs. At the same time, Madame Lang Yu did not stop attacking with her other sword. Long Feiyi was pincered. He dodged to the side and was about to swing his whip when Madame Lang Yu appeared in front of him. Then something miraculous happened. As soon as Lady Lang Yu reached him, her other sword moved through the air to chase after Long Fei's back. After a few rounds, Madame Lang Yu gradually gained the upper hand. Long Feiyi whispered, "Han Yunxi, use poison." They had agreed to work together. He would protect her as she approached the enemy and she would use poison without worry. It was time for them to work together. He alone was more than enough to deal with Madame Lang Yu. However, he might not be able to protect Han Yunxi. There were many assassins lurking around. He could not compete with Madame Lang Yu. Long Feiyi's judgment could not be wrong. However, Han Yunxi said, "It's still early. I have a way to break her dual sword combination." As she spoke, she took out a palm-sized magnet from her medical bag. Chapter 696. As soon as Han Yunxi took out her palm-sized magnet, the long swords floating behind them suddenly flew towards them. Long Feiyi was shocked and hurriedly dodged. "Han Yunxi, what's going on?" "It should be the opposite of the magnetic poles," Han Yunxi muttered to herself. At this moment, Lady Lang Yu's attacks intensified until she was right in front of them. Her two swords were about to pierce through Long Fei's body when Han Yunxi flipped over the magnet in her hand. In a flash, the swords on her back stopped in their tracks and fell to the ground. The swords in Madame Lang Yu's hands seemed to have lost their balance and kept shaking. If Madame Lang Yu wasn't holding them, they would have fallen to the ground. How could this be? Madame Lang Yu still had a triumphant smile on her face. Everything had happened too quickly and too suddenly. She couldn't react in time. Her expression was stiff and ugly. She wouldn't use her dual swords when facing the iron swords. Other than that, no one had ever broken her dual swords since they were created. However, Long Feiyi hadn't done anything yet. How could he break her dual swords? Han Yunxi was overjoyed. She knew that she had made the right bet again. In ancient times, there was no such thing as a magnet, only a natural magnet. The natural magnet in Han Yunxi's hand was actually a type of Chinese medicine. It could calm the nerves, calm the liver, improve the yang energy, improve the hearing, improve the eyesight, and regulate breathing. It could also be considered as an antidote for poison. Another use of this object was to extract needles to save people. There were a few times when a secret guard had been poisoned while carrying out a mission. She didn't need to operate on them and just placed this magnet on the wound to slowly extract the poison from the needles. Han Yunxi had been pondering over Madame Lang Yu's dual swords. She knew that some treasured swords had spirituality and could communicate with their masters. They could sense their master's hostility and murderous aura. However, no matter how much spirituality a treasured sword had, it was still an unintentional object. It couldn't be so cooperative with its master. Another situation was when the swordsman had extremely profound internal energy. The swordsman's aura could affect the surrounding airflow and use qi to control the sword. Although Han Yunxi didn't know martial arts, she was in the center of the fight. Other than the sword aura, she didn't feel the strong changes in the air around her. She firmly believed that Madame Lang Yu's inner strength hadn't reached that level yet. Even if Madame Lang Yu managed to do so, it would only be temporary. Madame Lang Yu had already used a few moves. The mystery behind the fusion of the two swords lay in the twin harmonious swords themselves. Therefore, she guessed that it was magnetism. These two swords were very likely to have two levels of yin and yang, so they could attract each other. That was why the sword behind them kept chasing after the sword in Lady Lang Yu's hand. Han Yunxi didn't care what material the double-armed sword was made of or how it was made. She was only concerned about whether the magnet in her hand could destroy the stable magnetic field between the two swords. Although this thing wasn't a magnet and didn't have a strong magnetic force, it still had a certain magnetism. Reality proved that Han Yunxi's guess was right. The magnet in her hand was the bane of the twin harmonious swords. Long Fei Yi, Madame Lang Yu's sword is useless now, Han Yunxi said with certainty. Let's go back. This prince will reward you properly. Long Fei Yi didn't give Madame Lang Yu a chance to think. He raised his whip and swung it at her. Madame Lang Yu was caught off guard and the whip hit her wrist. Her wrist was immediately lacerated. She was in so much pain that she almost lost her grip. Fortunately, she reacted in time and immediately retreated to the side. One sword had already fallen to the ground. If another one fell, she would lose all her face. Swish! Another whip followed. Madame Lang Yu hurriedly dodged. After that, Long Fei Ye's whip didn't stop. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Madame Lang Yu was suppressed to the point where she couldn't retaliate. She could only keep dodging. As she dodged, she tried to summon the sword from the ground. Unfortunately, she kept failing. The attraction between the two swords seemed to have been broken. Although Madame Lang Yu didn't want to accept it, she had to face reality. She and Long Fei Yi were evenly matched, but she had always relied on Long Fei Yi to protect Han Yunxi. That was why she had the upper hand. But now that she'd lost the advantage of the two swords and had been suppressed by Long Fei Yi, she knew that it would be difficult for her to make a comeback. Finally, she whistled without hesitation and summoned all of the assassins lying in ambush around the lake. In a flash, dozens of female assassins flew out from all directions. They were all top experts in the City of Daughters, and Han Yunxi recognized Leng Shuang at a glance. Actually, Han Yunxi didn't recognize Leng Shuang's face, but her revealing clothes. After all, very few women in Cloud Realm continent would dress like this. Leng Shuang stared at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi with a complicated look in her eyes. She wanted to say something, but didn't dare in front of her mother. Even with so many assassins surrounding them, Long Fei Ye's whip didn't stop lashing out at Madame Lang Yu. If Madame Lang Yu wasn't careful, she'd be whipped again. Soon enough, the surrounding assassins attacked from all sides. Long Fei's whip looked like it was about to hit Lady Lang Yu, but it suddenly changed directions. He spun around and sent the whip crashing into the assassins behind him, knocking them far, far away. Now that the assassins behind him had retreated, the ones in front closed in. Moreover, Madame Lang Yu had escaped Long Fei Ye's control and was ready to counterattack. Han Yunxi, are you ready? Long Fei Yi asked with a smile. Qinxia is always ready to serve your Highness Duke of Qin. Han Yunxi pretended to be serious and respectful. Long Fei Yi put away his golden whip without hesitation and held Han Yunxi in his arms before leaping into the air. Long Fei Yi, are you trying to escape? Madame Lang Yu was surprised. Long Fei Ye's sword had long fallen to the ground. Now that he'd put away his whip, what else could he be doing but running away? Just you women. His Highness Duke of Qin doesn't need to do anything. This Wang Fei will take care of you. Han Yunxi shouted back. Long Fei Yi suddenly flew into the crowd of assassins with her in his arms. Everyone was startled, unsure of what these two were up to. But they were all well-trained assassins, so how could they retreat? They raised their swords and attacked Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi easily dodged their attacks with Han Yunxi in his arms. Before the assassins could react, he'd already closed in on them. Han Yunxi had originally planned to use her Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain, but she hadn't expected Long Fei Yi to be so skillful. He dodged and weaved in and out of the flurry of attacks with her swift and steady movements, creating an extremely safe environment for her to poison the assassins. Han Yunxi didn't use her Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain. Instead, she used various poison needles hidden in her mouth, on her fingers, on the tips of her feet, on her arms, and on her hair. As soon as Long Fei Yi got close to the assassins, she'd insert her needles. Long Fei Yi was extremely fast. She couldn't keep up with him at first, but she gradually caught up. Her poisons became faster and faster, her movements becoming more and more practiced. Not long after, there were only about 10 assassins left. The rest were all poisoned and fell to the ground, unable to move. Madame Lang Yu finally saw the trick. She had to admit that her heart was beating wildly. She hadn't expected Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi to use this trick. Long Fei Yi had gotten close to her several times, but she hadn't been poisoned. Her reaction speed was fast, and Han Yunxi still couldn't catch up with her. Long Fei Yi didn't take the initiative to attack and only brought Han Yunxi to avoid the attacks. This was no different from only defending and not attacking. With his ability, how could the assassins easily hurt him if he only defended and didn't attack? Even if Madame Lang Yu had lost her dual harmonious swords, it would still be difficult for her to do so. Therefore, as long as he wasn't injured, Han Yunxi would deliberately and unscrupulously poison him. Therefore, the outcome of the battle was already decided. Madame Lang Yu knew that the most rational thing to do was to order a retreat. The task that Bai Yanqing had given her was already complete, but she was still unwilling to give up. Long Fei Yi, you're too despicable. What's the point of asking a woman for help? Madame Lang Yu rebuked angrily. Long Fei Yi ignored her. Han Yunxi had always been the sharp-tongued person. She retorted loudly, His Highness Duke of Qin disdains to deal with women, so naturally, this Princess Consort will help him. Are there any other women here who are willing to help? Apart from Han Yunxi, all the women present were on Madame Lang Yu's side. How should Madame Lang Yu respond to Han Yunxi? You have a sharp tongue. I'll kill you first. Madame Lang Yu picked up the sword on the ground and combined the dual harmonious swords into one, releasing a powerful sword aura. Leave her to me. I'll deal with the others first, Long Fei said in a low voice. He easily dodged Madame Ling Yu and Ling Shuang's sword, then swept past Ling Shuang with Han Yunqi. Even though Ling Shuang was on guard, she couldn't slow down Long Fei. After she was poisoned, her legs gave way and she fell to the ground. Madame Ling was shocked. Mother! Ling Shuang cried out before spitting up a mouthful of black blood. It was obvious that Han Yunqi hadn't poisoned her with the same poison she'd used on the other assassins. Han Yunqi had used hypertoxic poison. Madame Ling Yu rushed over and helped Ling Shuang up. At this moment, the remaining 4 assassins stopped and stood in front of Madame Ling Yu, guarding against Long Fei and Han Yunqi. I'm the only one who can cure her poison. Listen to me if you don't want to die, Han Yunqi warned Ling Yu. Unexpectedly, Madame Ling Yu ignored her warning. She supported Ling Shuang and turned to flee into the maze. The remaining 4 assassins didn't run away. Instead, they blocked the entrance to the maze, trying to buy time for their master. These 4 assassins were loyal. Long Fei and Han Yunqi didn't make things difficult for them because they didn't plan to chase after Madame Ling Yu. The real culprit behind the kidnapping was still standing at the side. The young woman had witnessed everything that happened just then. In less than an hour, under Long Fei's protection, she was as dazzling as Long Fei amidst the flashes of swords, making it impossible to look straight at her. No! The young woman couldn't believe what she had seen. She turned to flee. Unfortunately, Long Fei and Han Yunqi quickly blocked her path. Han Yunqi immediately activated Pear Blossom Teardrop Rain. A poisonous needle flew out and brushed past the young woman's face, causing her mask to fall off. Chapter 697. The needle knocked off the young woman's veil, revealing her to be none other than Duanmu Yao. Actually, Long Fei and Han Yunqi didn't need to look to know who she was. When Long Fei received the extortion letter, he guessed that it was Duanmu Yao. When she asked Long Fei why he didn't bring his profound frost sword, Han Yunqi guessed her identity as well. Long Fei and Han Yunqi assumed that the kidnapper would be the Tianan country's Empress Dowager, but never expected it to be Duanmu Yao. Duanmu Yao's status was enough to invite Lady Ling Yu. In that case, could they breathe a sigh of relief? Duanmu Yao had no idea about Long Fei's identity. But wasn't it too suspicious for her to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi for the sake of a profound frost sword that she couldn't control? Where is she? Long Fei asked coldly. Senior brother, Long Fei cut her off. Your lordship doesn't have a junior sister like you. Duanmu Yao's eyes reddened. Master's still waiting for us to go back together. Where is she? Don't make your lordship ask a 3rd time. Long Fei's patience was limited. Leaving aside Duanmu Yao's true motives, killing Han Yunqi had to be one of them. In the past, he'd let Duanmu Yao off multiple times for Master's sake, but this time he had no plans to do so. Even if Master investigated, he'd accept it. Women like her were really annoying. If you agree to my terms, I'll naturally send Grand Concubine Yi back to the Duke of Qin's estate. If you don't, I'd rather die here today. Duanmu Yao was resolute. Profound frost sword. Long Fei laughed coldly. Does Tsang Chuzi want it? You don't have to hand it over, as long as you treat my injuries. Duanmu Yao looked pitifully at Long Fei as if she was innocent and wronged. Actually, this was just a deal between her and Madame Ling Yu. Lady Ling Yu had left Grand Concubine Yi in her hands and told her to haggle with Long Fei for Long Fei's profound frost sword. She agreed without much thought. The only condition she gave Madame Ling Yu was to kill Han Yunqi. Even though she had written clearly in the blackmail letter that she wanted Long Fei Yi to come alone, she knew that Han Yunxi would definitely come with Long Fei Yi. Now that Lady Ling Yu had escaped, she didn't want the profound frost sword anymore. She only wanted her senior brother to heal her. In her opinion, this request was not excessive. Before Long Fei Yi could speak, Han Yunxi coldly said, "This princess refuses." Han Yunxi, what qualifications do you have to make a decision for my senior brother? Who do you think you are? Duan Muyao raged. Even after being warned, she still insisted on calling Long Fei Yi senior brother. If you don't treat junior sister's injuries, then you're being unjust. If you don't save Mu Fei, then you're being unfilial. Han Yunxi, do you want to frame my senior brother for being unjust and unfilial? Duan Muyao asked boldly. Han Yunxi was about to die of disgust at this woman. Even if Long Fei Yi didn't kill her today, she wouldn't mind doing it herself. Her eyes flashed with icy light as Han Yunxi suddenly drew close to Duan Muyao. Long Fei Yi is my man. Everything of his is mine. That's my right. Han Yunxi, you're shameless. Duan Muyao raised her hand to slap her. Long Fei Yi was about to make a move, but Han Yunxi had already grabbed Duan Muyao's wrist. Duan Muyao wanted to struggle, but she couldn't. She was about to raise her other hand, but Han Yunxi was even faster. She viciously slapped her across the face. Slap! Duan Muyao couldn't believe it. She had never been slapped in the face like this in her entire life. Han Yunxi, I'll kill you. Unable to restrain her anger, she immediately swung her other hand, but Han Yunxi caught it again. What was wrong with her? She was a martial arts practitioner. How could her sword-wielding hand not be a match for Han Yunxi's needle-wielding hand? Long Fei Yi had already noticed the clues, but his expression remained cold as he stood behind Han Yunxi, acting as her powerful shield. What's wrong? Out of strength. Han Yunxi smiled cold. You poisoned me. Duan Muyao couldn't believe it. She clearly hadn't been poisoned. Just now, the poison needle had only brushed past her face and removed her mask. Duan Muyao, are you blind or stupid? Can't you see that all these people on the ground have been poisoned? Han Yunxi snorted disdainfully. How could I possibly not poison you? You really think you're something. You're just a lucky bastard. Your innate talents are similar to that of old Kenzo's wife, and that's why Kenzo doted on you. Do you really think you're different from the rest? Do you really think that everyone can't compare to you and have to give way to you? Han Yunxi released Duan Muyao's hands and pushed her to the ground, looking down at her disdainfully. Duan Muyao, I'm telling you now. You'll never be an exception in front of my husband. You can give up on that idea. The poison in Duan Muyao's body was already acting up. She sat on the ground, clutching her swollen cheek, her eyes red with anger. She didn't have the strength to stand up, but she had Grand Concubine Yi. This was her last and biggest bargaining chip. Duan Muyao looked at Long Fei Yi's cold face and silent face before suddenly laughing out loud. Long Fei Yi, don't you want to see your Mu Fei anymore? Duan Muyao had long called Long Fei Yi by his full name in front of outsiders, but this was the first time she'd done so in front of him. Did this count as love turning to hate? No, at most, this was shame turning to hate. Duan Muyao didn't understand love at all. She only knew how to possess and be vain. Even if Duan Muyao wanted to talk terms with Long Fei Yi, Han Yunxi didn't give her a chance. She didn't even give her a chance to speak with Long Fei Yi. Before Long Fei Yi could reply, Han Yunxi asked coldly, Duan Muyao, besides feeling weak all over, don't you feel that your face is itchy as well? At Han Yunxi's reminder, Duan Muyao couldn't help but scratch her face. Her cheeks really were itchy, as if they were dry from lack of moisture. It would have been better if she didn't scratch, but after a few scratches, she realized that her cheeks were so dry that they were peeling off. She finally realized the severity of the problem. Han Yunshi, what kind of poison did you use on me? One night like years, Han Yunshi replied. Duanmu Yao grew uneasy at the name. Just what kind of poison is it? It only needs 1 night, or 12 hours to be exact, for your face to gradually age until you look like your old age. Han Yunshi explained patiently. Right now, your face is already drying out. Once it dries out, you'll develop age spots and wrinkles. Once your face is old enough, you'll regain your strength. No. I don't want to. Duanmu Yao seemed to have lost her mind. Besides Long Feiyi, the only thing she cared about in this life was her face. She had impeccable features, flawless skin, and an otherworldly air about her. She was the most beautiful woman in Cloud Realm continent, as beautiful as a celestial mountain. How could she endure the spots and wrinkles? How could she face the fact that she'd aged overnight? I don't want to. Han Yunshi, where's the antidote? This princess orders you to give me the antidote right now, right now. Han Yunshi, give me the antidote, hurry. Duanmu Yao lost all reason as she screamed. But time didn't stop because of this, nor did the poison dissipate. Instead, her agitation made it spread even faster across her face. Soon enough, she felt the corners of her eyes and wrinkles on her forehead. She couldn't take it. Han Yunshi, did you hear that? Give me the antidote. Han Yunshi, give me the antidote and I'll agree to anything. Hurry. Han Yunshi didn't budge, but asked coldly, where's Grand Concubine Yi? Give me the antidote. As long as my face heals, I promise you'll be able to see Grand Concubine Yi right away, Duanmu Yao said urgently. This Wang Fei can slowly discuss the issue of giving her the antidote or the person first. But this Wang Fei has to remind you out of the kindness of my heart that 1 night like years is an irreversible poison. What do you mean? Duanmu Yao grew uneasy. Irreversible means that the antidote can only prevent your face from aging further, but not restore you to your original appearance. Han Yunshi smiled slightly, looking completely harmless. Duanmu Yao, on the other hand, broke down. Han Yunshi, you slut. I'm going to kill you. Duanmu Yao had already unsheathed her sword, but she couldn't swing it. Han Yunshi backed away with her arms crossed over her chest, looking down disdainfully at her. Fine, when you recover your strength, we'll duel again. I'll wait. Duanmu Yao was so angry that she almost spat up blood. She could even taste blood in her throat. Wait? To her, wait was the same as age. Did she have any other choice? She didn't. She shouted, someone come. Very soon, the 2 servant girls hidden in the forest carried Grand Concubine Yi out. She was still unconscious and unlucky. Long Feiyi examined her and confirmed that she was only unconscious, but not seriously injured. Han Yunshi, where's the antidote? Duanmu Yao was burning with impatience. Antidote. Han Yunshi creased her brows as she pretended to think. The antidote, did I bring it with me? Duanmu Yao was about to cry as she raged. Han Yunshi, you can't be like this. Then tell me, what should I do? Han Yunshi asked back seriously. Are you going to go back on your word? Give me the antidote, right now. Duanmu Yao was about to lose her mind. Han Yunshi crouched down to admire Duanmu Yao's wrinkled forehead and blotchy cheeks. Duanmu Yao, calm down a bit. Let's talk things out. The more agitated you get, the faster the poison will take effect. If this keeps up, you'll probably grow old in less than a night. Duanmu Yao touched her face and really started to cry. Han Yunshi, I'm begging you. Just take it as me begging you, alright? Han Yunshi, you're not the type to go back on your word, right? Should this Wang Fei keep her word to someone like you? Han Yunshi retorted cold. Duanmu Yao was left speechless. She could only beg now, but Han Yunshi simply took out the antidote and tossed it to her. Duanmu Yao, this Wang Fei still has to keep her word when it comes to people like you. That's because this Wang Fei isn't the same type of person as you. Duanmu Yao didn't care about anything else as she swallowed the antidote. Grand Concubine Yi was saved, but Duanmu Yao had suffered a great loss. Han Yunshi was about to leave when Long Fei Yi reached out and grabbed the sword on the ground, pointing it at Duanmu Yao. Chapter 698. Long Fei Ye's sword was pointed at Duanmu Yao. As a fellow swordsman, Duanmu Yao immediately sensed his murderous aura. Han Yunshi couldn't help but shuddered despite being an outsider to the martial arts world. It had been a long time since she'd felt Long Fei Ye's icy aura. Long Fei Yi wanted Duanmu Yao's life. Han Yunshi was very surprised. If Long Fei Yi killed Duanmu Yao, how would he explain it to Elder Kenzo when he ascended Celestial Mountain? Duanmu Yao was so frightened that she didn't even care about her ruined face. How dare he? The two maids beside her quickly drew their swords. Even though they were also expert swordsmen, they were no match for Long Fei Ye's sword aura. Long Fei Yi swept them away with a sweep of his sword. Duanmu Yao wanted to take the opportunity to flee, but Long Fei Ye's sword quickly blocked her path. Duanmu Yao glanced at the forest out of the corner of her eye. She looked puzzled, but quickly looked away. Long Fei Yi, don't you dare, she shouted. Why wouldn't he dare? He didn't waste a single word. He viciously stabbed his sword into Duanmu Yao's dantian. Duanmu Yao's eyes widened in disbelief. Long Fei Yi, you, however, Long Fei Yi didn't continue to stab his sword. Instead, he pulled it out. With one hand holding Han Yunshi and the other holding his sword, he leaned back to stab at the attacker behind him. He only had one foot on the ground, so his body was almost parallel to the ground. Han Yunshi's waist was also held. Her entire body leaned back in the same motion as Long Fei Yi. However, she saw an incomparably sharp sword in front of her. If Long Fei Yi had been just a bit slower, or if she had been just a bit slower, the sword would have pierced her from behind. Someone had ambushed her. That was close. The sword of the assailant was threatening Han Yunshi. As long as it slashed down, it was very likely that Han Yunshi would be split into two halves. Long Fei Yi leaned back and stabbed his sword towards the man's abdomen. As long as he stabbed down, the sneak attacker's abdomen would be pierced. Who was the mastermind behind this? Both Long Fei and Han Yunshi could see him, but his face was obscured by his black robes and face mask. Long Fei Yi knew about the ambush in the forest, so he didn't take it to heart. However, the ambusher behind them had killed his way out of the forest and came to their back. The distance was not short. Long Fei Yi didn't notice it until the murderous aura approached. There was no doubt that the attacker was not simple. The people from the City of Daughters had already left. What kind of expert would be colluding with Duanmu Yao and dare to make Long Fei Yi an enemy? Han Yunshi was about to silently shoot out her hidden needles when the sneak attacker sneered. Esteemed Wang Fei, swords don't have eyes, but old man does. If you move again, you'll have to bear the consequences. He thought that Han Yunshi would be afraid, but who knew that Han Yunshi would be very calm and sigh. What can this Wang Fei do when faced with such a shameless sneak attack? I'll just admit defeat. You! The sneak attacker was furious. Just as he was about to move, Long Fei Yi warned, bear the consequences. The sneak attacker really didn't dare to move. Just like that, the three of them kept each other in check, facing each other in silence. Duanmu Yao clutched her bleeding wound and fell to the ground, paralyzed. But she still nervously watched this scene, even her breathing became cautious. White mist pervaded the forest, the verdant lake, everything was silent. Silence filled the entire sky and earth. Life and death hung in the balance of a single sword and a single thought. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Ye's nerves were stretched taut, but the sneak attacker and Duanmu Yao were even more nervous. Although the two sides seemed to be keeping each other in check, Long Fei Yi had the upper hand as long as he was willing to sacrifice Han Yunxi. He could easily kill the sneak attacker with a single strike. Suddenly, Duanmu Yao cried out, "Senior brother, kill him. He's Zhang Qiuzi. If you kill him, we'll both pretend nothing happened today. I won't mention a word to master." That's right, the sneak attacker was Zhang Qiuzi. Duanmu Yao had invited him here to kill Han Yunxi. Everything was well planned and foolproof, but she never expected Zhang Qiuzi to stay put even after Long Fei Yi was about to kill her. A cold smile rose to Long Fei's lips. He had long guessed that Zhang Qiuzi was the culprit. The City of Daughters would never cooperate with Carefree City, so only Zhang Qiuzi had the ability to sneak up on him from behind. Long Fei Yi ignored Duanmu Yao and said coldly, "Whether you live or die, Martial Uncle Zhang can choose for yourself, right?" "Of course I live. Your martial uncle fears death the most, he." Zhang Qiuzi took off his face mask and chuckled. But his heart was secretly alarmed. He never expected Long Fei Yi to sense his sneak attack. How long had it been since they last met? His martial arts had improved so much despite his injuries. "Since you're afraid, you should act like you're afraid." Long Fei Yi looked up at Zhang Qiuzi, but his tone was as domineering as ever. Zhang Qiuzi couldn't gain the upper hand with words, so he'd been tricked again. Impatiently, he said, "Old man, when you count to 3, we'll withdraw our swords together." "Together," Long Fei Yi said. If Zhang Qiuzi shouted alone, he'd be in control of time. He and Han Yunxi would be in a passive position. Withdrawing their swords together meant breaking the stalemate and beginning a new round of competition. There was no room for error. Long Fei Yi and Zhang Qiuzi were both prepared. Han Yunxi was secretly preparing her poison needles as well. Duanmu Yao watched from the sidelines, so nervous that she didn't even notice her own tears. What should I do now? Who's going to save me now that I've offended both sides? I don't want to die. 1. As soon as he spoke, Long Fei's sword-on flared up. Zhang Qiuzi's blade clattered and vibrated. Han Yunxi stared closely at all of Zhang Qiuzi's weak points from her angle. Duanmu Yao used all of her strength to clutch her wound with one hand and push herself up from the ground with the other. 2. The sword-on Long Fei's blade converged at the tip, causing Zhang Qiuzi's blade to stop shaking violently. Han Yunxi chose a key acupoint to attack while Duanmu Yao was already kneeling on the ground. The count of 3 was about to be called out. Long Fei Yi and Zhang Qiuzi were about to withdraw their swords and begin a new round of fighting. Since they were evenly matched, the first to seize the opportunity would be the victor. Everyone was waiting for the count of 3. Even Long Fei Yi and Zhang Qiuzi were waiting for each other to decide the victor. 3. Neither Long Fei Yi nor Zhang Qiuzi went back on their word and withdrew their swords. As soon as the threat to Zhang Qiuzi's abdomen was removed, he stabbed again with killing intent. At the same time, the threat to Han Yunxi was gone as well. Long Fei Yi simply dragged her off the ground, causing both of them to crash to the ground. Long Fei Yi's sword was now filled with power. With a toss, it flew towards Duanmu Yao while his legs caught Zhang Qiuzi's blade between them. Zhang Qiuzi abandoned his weapon to dodge Han Yunxi's poison needles and somersaulted into the air to kick away Long Fei Yi's sword. Long Fei Yi immediately rose to his feet and lashed out with his whip, wrapping it around Duanmu Yao's waist. But Song Chosi grabbed Duanmu Yao's arm at the same time. Once again, the two of them fell into a stalemate. Long Fei Yi wanted Duanmu Yao dead, while Song Chosi wanted her alive. But Duanmu Yao didn't have the capital to keep them in a stalemate for long. Long Fei's whip tightened even more. Her wound was already bleeding profusely to begin with, but now it was gushing out like a fountain. She couldn't care less about her appearance, couldn't care less about her dantian. She cried and shouted, "Let me go, let me go. Master won't let you off. Save me, save me, master." Han Yunxi stood behind Long Fei Yi, her eyes narrowed as she aimed for Tsang Chosi's head. If she could get rid of Tsang Chosi here and now, their trip to Celestial Mountain would go much smoother. But as soon as Han Yunxi's poison needles left her mouth, a stone suddenly flew out of the mist and deflected Han Yunxi's needles. "Who's there?" Long Fei Yi cried out in alarm. While he was distracted, Tsang Chosi immediately pulled Duanmu Yao away and led her into the mist. Han Yunxi didn't hesitate to poison the mist. Although she couldn't use lethal poisons on a large area of the mist, it was enough to keep Tsang Chosi and Duanmu Yao in place. As long as she could pin them down, it wouldn't be too late to find them later. Everything had happened so suddenly that life and death had been decided in a split second. But Han Yunxi didn't feel any lingering fear, nor did she panic. She was calm, collected, and cool. She stared at the mist with a solemn expression, so serious that even Long Fei Yi didn't dare to disturb her. She was trying to think of a way to find Tsang Chosi and Duanmu Yao in the mist. She couldn't be sure where they'd stop, but she was certain they'd stop. They'd be poisoned and wouldn't be able to walk out of the mist. She thought of a solution as she waited. Long Fei Yi waited in silence, but Han Yunxi suddenly turned to him with a face full of fear. "Long Fei Yi, someone's cured the poison." "What?" Long Fei Yi was alarmed. "Someone's cured the poison. All of the poison in the mist has been cured. They even have help, and it's a poison expert." Han Yunxi explained as she poisoned them again. But her opponent seemed to be targeting her on purpose. She poisoned them as well, but it didn't take long for the poison to be cured. After repeating the process multiple times, Han Yunxi gave up. Any further attempts would be futile. "Jun Xie." Han Yunxi muttered to herself. "Doesn't seem like it." Long Fei Yi looked back at the stone that had ambushed them. Anyone who could hit the needle with such precision from such a distance had to have extraordinary skills. Based on what Long Fei Yi knew of Jun Xie, it couldn't be him unless his martial arts had improved. A complicated look flickered past Long Fei Yi's eyes before he murmured, "The person who saved Jun Xie, his master." Han Yunxi's expression was complicated as well. Although they still had no idea who had saved Jun Xie from Fishery Island, there was only one suspect, the former head of the 100 Poisons sect and Jun Xie's master. The spy from Medicine City who'd infiltrated the 100 Poisons sect had been killed recently, so there was still no progress on the case. Duanmu Yao's connections are so extensive. Han Yunxi laughed coldly. Long Fei Yi glanced at the unconscious Grand Concubine Yi as if pondering over something. At this moment, Han Yunxi suddenly sensed poison in the mist. Without a doubt, the enemy had used poison. "Long Fei Yi," she muttered, "they want to trap us here until we die." Chapter 699. Since the enemy had poisoned the fog, it meant that Tsang Chosi and Duanmu Yao had already escaped the maze and were planning to trap them with poison. If it was a simple contest of poison skills, Han Yunxi was confident in herself. After all, she had the detox system and poison storage space. But she still had to face the maze. Not only did she have to break through the poison, but find a guide to lead her and Long Fei Yi out of the maze. No matter if she used the mosquito swarm or other poisons, she and Long Fei Yi would be in deep trouble if they fell under the enemy's control midway. Long Fei Yi only had to protect her before, but now he had Grand Concubine Yi on his side as well. She had to admit that the maze was her and Long Fei Yi's common weakness. Thus, Han Yunxi had to be more cautious than ever. "I'll play with them first and test the waters," Han Yunxi said seriously. Long Fei Yi nodded, trusting her. Han Yunxi immediately broke through the enemy's poison before picking out a new poison from the poison pond in the poison storage space. It was called Thousand Illusions. Anyone poisoned by 1,000 illusions would experience thousands of frightening illusions before scaring themselves to death. 1,000 illusions was a new poison from the poison pond. Han Yunxi had only recently acquired the antidote, so she wanted to see just how capable the enemy was. But reality gave Han Yunxi a fright. The enemy had only used the time it took to brew a cup of tea to break through 1,000 illusions. New poisons weren't limited to the person who made them. Other people could do the same, but it would take time. Some people could research for decades without success. But the enemy had only used the time it took to brew a cup of tea. How powerful was that? Han Yunxi couldn't help but reflect on herself. If she didn't have the detox system, how long would she have needed? She didn't need long, but it couldn't have been as short as the time it took to brew a cup of tea either. Han Yunxi knew the enemy was more capable than Juni Xia, but she never expected them to be this strong. Just who on earth was the other party? She stared at Long Fei Yi with wide eyes. Long Fei Yi was puzzled. "What's wrong?" Han Yunxi didn't answer him and continued to use the new poison from the poison pool. However, the situation was still the same. It would be neutralized within the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Han Yunxi stopped and thought for a long time. In the end, she took out a poison called bone erosion. This corroding bone was none other than the poison that Han Yunxi had applied on Jun Yixia's shoulder. If the other party was Jun Yixia's master, then he definitely wouldn't be able to break the eroding bone technique. Otherwise, Jun Yixia's shoulder would have been healed long ago. The last time she saw Jun Yixia in Medicine City, Han Yunxi had paid attention to that guy's shoulder. The poison hadn't been cured. Fortunately, the corroding bone could also be dispersed within the fog. Han Yunxi had only concocted one antidote before and had thrown it away. Now that she wanted to use the poison, she couldn't possibly trap herself. She had to first see if the detoxification system still had enough ingredients to concoct the antidote. Fortunately, Han Yunxi was able to quickly concoct the antidote. Thus, she boldly scattered the poison in the fog. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the poison hadn't been neutralized, but Han Yunxi knew that she might not win. She quietly waited. Eroding bone was much more difficult than the previous poisons. Although Long Fei Yi wasn't clear on the specifics, he didn't disturb her when he saw the seriousness between her brows. He silently waited on the side. Han Yunxi waited for a full hour. Eroding bone still hadn't been neutralized. Han Yunxi hesitated for a moment before explaining the details to Long Fei Yi. "Perhaps we can figure out how to get out of the fog. Let's wait a little longer." Long Fei Yi was still cautious. Han Yunxi nodded. Who knew that an hour later, an unfortunate event would finally occur? The poison had been neutralized. The other party had only used 2 hours to concoct the antidote. Could it be that the other party wasn't Jun Yixia's master? Han Yunxi once again turned to look at Long Fei Yi. Her eyes widened in disbelief. The last time they had seen Jun Yixia was in Medicine City. At that time, Han Yunxi had paid special attention. The poison on Jun Yixia's shoulder hadn't been neutralized. Taking a step back, if Jun Yixia's master had only recently neutralized the poison, then he could have directly taken out the antidote. There was no need to waste 2 hours. Not someone from the 100 Poison sect? Long Fei Yi asked suspiciously. Han Yunqi nodded vehemently. If he wasn't Jun Xie's master, then who could it be? This level of poison skills made Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi think of the same word at the same time. Han Yunqi murmured, Poison sect's orphan. In this world, aside from the Poison sect, 100 Poison sect, and Han Yunqi, who else could have such frightening poison skills? Long Fei Yi, do you think my father is still alive? How many of the Poison sect's orphans are still alive? Where are they hiding? Han Yunqi asked timidly. Lady Tianqin's death was too strange. She couldn't help but be suspicious. Long Fei Yi had actually sent people to investigate in secret. Unfortunately, Lady Lianxin had provided him with a few clues, but there had been no news to this day. The Poison sect was even harder to investigate than the 100 Poison sect. Long Fei Yi looked back at the lake and wanted to say something, but Han Yunqi only said angrily, I don't believe in heresy. No matter what, they had to leave the lake. The maze was a path they had to take. Han Yunqi told herself that she had to win. She continued to use poisons. Long Fei Yi mused that it was good to test the waters a bit more. By now, Zhang Qiuzi and Duanmu Yao had already fled far away from the maze. Zhang Qiuzi was familiar with the Qimen Duanjia arts, so it was easy for him to walk out of the maze. But he had no idea that he and Duanmu Yao had almost been poisoned just then. Nor did he know that someone had secretly helped him break through Han Yunqi's poison fog. After fleeing for a bit and making sure that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi weren't chasing them, he finally set Duanmu Yao down. Duanmu Yao was almost out of breath. If he didn't put her down now, he'd have saved her for nothing. Duanmu Yao held on to her last shred of consciousness as she watched Zhang Qiuzi feed her medicinal pills, stop the bleeding, and bandage her wounds. After stopping the bleeding and taking the medicine, Duanmu Yao felt a bit better. Her mind calmed down and she tried to circulate her internal energy, only to discover that she had no internal energy left. How could this be? No. Her old face was filled with fear, making her look even more terrifying. No, it can't be. She tried again, but still couldn't circulate any internal energy. My Dantian, my martial arts, she stared at Zhang Qiuzi in disbelief. Cold laughter filled his face. It's already good enough that you managed to keep your life. What else do you want? Yao Yao, this time, you have to thank your martial uncle properly. You did it on purpose. She finally understood. She was filled with rage, but she didn't even have the energy to vent it. Zhang Qiuzi laughed coldly. Yao Yao, from now on, you have to help your martial uncle take good care of Li Kenshin. Li Kenshin was none other than the head of Tianshan Kenzo and Old Man Kenzo's real name. Everyone on Celestial Mountain called him Master. Outside the mountain, people called him Old Man Kenzo. Only behind his back did Zhang Qiuzi dare to call him that. He really did come with Duanmu Yao to kill Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi. Unfortunately, he changed his mind at the last minute. Not only did he want to kill Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi, but he also wanted to borrow Long Fei Yi's hand to injure Duanmu Yao. Thus, he acted according to circumstances and changed his original plan. He would wait for Long Fei Yi to hurt Duanmu Yao before saving her. That way, Duanmu Yao would be crippled and forced to rely on him. In the past, Duanmu Yao had relied on the sect heads doting to haggle with him. She even let Tang Li take advantage of the Tang clan incident. Now that she was crippled, what right did she have to talk terms with him? You're despicable. Duanmu Yao raged. Zhang Qiuzi stood up and said Yao Yao, your martial uncle risked his life to save you, but you repay kindness with enmity. Then Master might as well make the word despicable a reality. As soon as he finished, he turned to leave. He's abandoning Duanmuyao. Duanmuyao was injured to this extent, and they were in the middle of nowhere. Did he want her dead? Duanmuyao was both angry and aggrieved. She never thought she'd end up like this. Although she wasn't willing, she'd die if she didn't beg Zhangqiuzi. Soon enough, she shouted, "Martial uncle, Yao Yao was wrong. As long as Master takes Yao Yao back to Celestial Mountain, Yao Yao will listen to you." She could only endure. Master would definitely find a way to save her once they got back to Celestial Mountain. Her martial arts would definitely recover. Only then did Zhangqiuzi return. Instead of pulling Duanmuyao to her feet, he asked cold, "Besides the City of Daughters, did you have any other helpers?" "No," Duanmuyao replied honestly. "Who threw that stone?" Zhangqiuzi couldn't figure it out. Whoever could throw that stone wasn't simple. Moreover, they had to be proficient in Chimenduanjia. Logically speaking, they should have shown up after saving them. But he and Duanmuyao hadn't seen anyone after leaving the maze. "I don't know either." Duanmuyao had been on the brink of death just then, so she didn't have time to think about it. Could it have been Lady Lengyu's helpers, she guessed. This person isn't simple. "We'll ask Lady Lengyu later," Zhangqiuzi said. He had to figure out who this person was. He had to be a huge obstacle in his path to dominating the martial arts circles. Once Duanmuyao agreed, Zhangqiuzi helped her to her feet and wrapped his arm around her waist, a vulgar smile on his face. "Martial uncle." Duanmuyao's voice was choked with sobs. Unfortunately, she couldn't push him away. She knew full well how lustful Zhangqiuzi could be. "Martial uncle, let's talk things over, properly, all right?" Duanmuyao begged. Zhangqiuzi didn't release her, but tightened his grip. "Tell Martial uncle, how did you serve your master?" "I didn't." Duanmuyao fumed. Although Master doted on her, he treated her like a daughter, pure and innocent. "You didn't." Zhangqiuzi didn't believe her. "You still don't know what kind of person Master is?" Duanmuyao asked seriously. He, that's even better. Then I'll only serve Martial uncle in the future." Zhangqiuzi laughed out loud. "Your face is already like this. As for your body, Martial uncle likes it very much." Bitterness rose in her heart as Duanmuyao's nose turned sour. Her eyes almost collapsed as she tried to push him away, but Zhangqiuzi's voice was cold. "Do you believe that old man can make you die at the foot of Celestial Mountain?" Duanmuyao didn't dare to move at his words. She allowed Zhangqiuzi to hold her while his filthy hands roamed all over her body. She cried helplessly, wishing that it wasn't Zhangqiuzi holding her, but her senior brother. "Senior brother, save Yao Yao. Save Yao Yao, please." She screamed in her heart, but Long Feiyi couldn't hear her. Even if he did, he wouldn't save her. Meanwhile, Long Feiyi was by Han Yunxi's side. Their opponent was extremely powerful. It was none other than Chapter 700. Han Yunxi's valiant opponent was none other than Jun Yixie's master, the former leader of the 100 Poison sect, Bai Yanqing. He and his disciple Bai Yuqiao were sitting on a large stone at the entrance of the maze instead of being surrounded by the fog. Bai Yuqiao had always known that her master was Cloud Realm Continent's top poisons master. Even Han Yunxi, who'd made a name for herself in the past few years, was no match for him. But today, her worldview had been completely refreshed. Reality after reality told her that she'd underestimated Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi had such skills at such a young age, far surpassing her and her senior brother. She was definitely a genius. At the same time, Bai Yuqiao realized that she'd underestimated her master even more. Han Yunxi had poisoned him so many times, but she only recognized the poison on her senior brother's shoulder. She'd seen all the others before. But her master seemed to be very familiar with all of Han Yunxi's poisons. He didn't even need to think before dispelling them. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, her master wasn't thinking, but explaining the poisons to her. Bai Yuqiao had no time to wonder just how miraculous her master's poison skills were. She was only curious about two things. First, her master hadn't brought anything with him on this trip, so where did he find the ingredients to create the antidote? After all, she hadn't even seen him take out the antidote. He'd only taken a few steps into the maze before the poison in the fog disappeared. The other question was the rheumatic poison in her senior brother's body. After all, senior brother's shoulder was still being tormented by the poison. Her master had been trying to figure out an antidote all this time, but he still hadn't figured it out. Just then, her master had spent 2 hours napping instead of trying to figure out an antidote. After waking up, he'd taken a few steps into the maze before dispelling the poison in the fog. Just what was going on? Han Yunxi was still poisoning him while her master continued to dispel the poison. Bai Yuqiao couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Master, can you, now, cure the poison in senior brother's shoulder?" Bai Yuqiao had too many questions, but none of them were as important as this one. She couldn't figure it out. Did master find the antidote just by taking a nap? Senior brother had been suffering from the poison for 2 years now. Every time the weather turned cold, the poison would act up and get worse. Senior brother was certain that her master would take this matter to heart, so he'd never asked his master whether he'd found an antidote. Bai Yuqiao's heart ached every time she saw him in such agony. "I can't," Bai said. Bai Yuqiao was startled. "Then just now, master, who told you that detoxification is the only way to make the poison disappear?" Bai Yanqing retorted. "Your disciple is slow-witted." Bai Yuqiao grew even more bewildered, but she immediately lowered her head, not daring to ask any more questions. She knew that if she asked another question, her master would definitely not let her off easily. Bai Yuqiao obediently waited at the side. Soon, Bai Yanqing and Han Yunxi fought several rounds. Bai Yanqing couldn't help but mutter to himself, "The water of 10,000 poisons must be in this girl's hands." Water of 10,000 poisons. Bai Yuqiao was shocked. Wasn't the water of 10,000 poisons the poisonous water that had disappeared from the medicinal herbs forest? She had heard her senior brother mention it before. The water of 10,000 poisons could cultivate countless new types of poisons. One had to know that his senior brother had been looking for this item for a long time. Not long after, Bai Yanqing allowed the poisonous fog to spread out again. He sat back down on the big bluestone, looking a little tired. Bai Yuqiao hurriedly handed over the kettle. "Master, take a rest." I haven't met a worthy opponent for several decades. It's really tiring." Bai Yanqing sighed. Han Yunxi's poison in the fog was of the same grade as the poison in Jun Yixie's body. He had deliberately rested for 2 hours just now to confuse Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's judgment. But now, he had no choice but to rest. Thinking about it, he and Han Yunxi had been fighting for more than half a day. It was really exhausting. "Master, rest well. Your disciple will keep watch. Your disciple guarantees that Han Yunxi won't be able to use the poisonous mosquito swarm," Bai Yuqiao said seriously. Even if Han Yunxi wasn't afraid of the poisonous fog, she and Long Fei Yi wouldn't be able to walk out of the Lost Path formation. Because Bai Yuqiao had already used poison in the surroundings, the poisonous mosquito swarm within 100 li radius wouldn't dare to come close. Moreover, even if Han Yunxi didn't use the poisonous mosquito swarm and summoned other poisonous creatures to lead the way, she would still have a way to interfere with her. Bai Yanqing didn't say anything and closed his eyes. Actually, he only came to test Han Yunxi today. He didn't want to do anything to her. Moreover, with Long Fei Ye's ability, he might not be able to do anything to them. Acting rashly would cause more harm than good. Once he'd rested enough, he'd fight a few more rounds with Han Yunxi. That girl's poisons were more stunning than the last. Bai Yanqing was resting, but Han Yunxi was very energetic. Seeing that the poison she used didn't disappear in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, she muttered, "Long Fei Yi, this poison is of the same grade as bone erosion. The other party wouldn't need another 2 hours to neutralize it, right?" It was hard for Long Fei Yi to answer if he wasn't sure. "Why don't I try a poison of a higher grade?" Han Yunxi asked seriously. She had many poisons of a higher grade than bone erosion, but she only had 1 or 2 new types. She wouldn't use them unless it was absolutely necessary. There's no need. Not only is there poisonous fog in the maze, but there are also formations. There are too many accidents, so it's best if we don't leave the maze. Long Fei Yi had always liked to take risks, but he would always choose the method with the least risk when it came to Han Yunxi. His poison skills were so exquisite that he couldn't be compared to the people Madame Lang Yu had ambushed previously. The enemy was in the dark, while they were out in the open. No matter what, they were at a disadvantage. Long Fei Yi said seriously, "You've been poisoning him, and he's been neutralizing the poison. You've already exposed too much, so there's no need for us to continue playing. If we don't take the maze, is there another way?" Han Yunxi asked helplessly. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi actually answered her, "Yes, there is another exit." Long Fei Yi didn't look like he was joking, and he wouldn't make a silly joke at a time like this. However, Han Yunxi couldn't believe it. They were surrounded by a dense forest, and the fog was so thick that they couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. Even if they were in the maze, they could still barely see the way. Right now, she only regretted leaving Little Rascal with Gu Beiyue. If Little Rascal was here, perhaps it could bring them through the maze. "Where?" Han Yunxi asked suspiciously. Long Fei Yi sat down and took off his boots. The more Han Yunxi looked at him, the more confused she became. She realized that Long Fei Yi's figure was so good that even his ankles were full of strength. However, she quickly discovered that there was a light blue crystal nailed to his ankles. Han Yunxi was in disbelief. She and Long Fei Yi had known each other for so long, but she didn't know that he had such a treasure hidden in his ankles. From the luster of this crystal, it didn't lose out to the white jade crystal in her hands. He couldn't tell her that this was a blue jade crystal that had never appeared before. Long Fei Yi pulled out the blue crystal and blood immediately seeped out from his ankles. Han Yunxi then discovered that this thing was about the same size as a woman's earring. Long Fei Yi's ankles weren't pierced, but the crystal was directly nailed into his flesh. When this thing was pulled out, the wound started bleeding. Han Yunxi hurriedly took out disinfectant and gauze, but Long Fei Yi was already about to put on his socks. "No rush, treat the wound first." Han Yunxi stopped him. "There's no need for this small matter, any injury on your body is no small matter to me." Han Yunxi was very domineering. She pressed Long Fei Yi back down, rolled up his trousers, took off his socks, and seriously disinfected his wound before bandaging it. Long Fei Yi sat down obediently. He looked at Han Yunxi's serious little face and unconsciously lifted her chin slowly. Han Yunxi casually opened it. "Don't quarrel." She seriously bandaged Long Fei Yi's wound and wrapped it tightly. Then she helped him put on his socks and boots. When she was done, she looked up. Long Fei Yi asked, "Can we quarrel now?" Han Yunxi couldn't help but laugh. Before she could answer, Long Fei Yi lifted her chin and gently bit her lips before pulling her up. Han Yunxi wanted to ignore it, but she still unconsciously pursed her lips. Of course, she quickly focused her attention on the blue crystal in Long Fei Yi's hand. What is this? Can it take us out of here? She asked curiously. Long Fei placed the blue crystal in his hand. The blue crystal had a gentle luster that was comparable to the best pearls. Although it was small, the faint blue made people feel refreshed and enlightened. After looking at it for a long time, they would think of the sky, the sea, and everything else that was vast and boundless. This thing seemed to have some kind of magical power. Han Yunqi was deeply attracted to it. Long Fei asked, "What does it look like?" "It looks like a tear." Han Yunqi was very sure. "It looks like a teardrop." "This is a teardrop. It's one of the mermaid's tears. It's called the tear of holding." Long Fei explained. Han Yunqi was very surprised. "It's from the Bailey family." The mermaid race had many branches and the Bailey family was one of them. They could live normally on land like humans, but once they entered the water, they could freely display the characteristics of mermaids. The Bailey mermaid race is the tear shark of the mermaid race. Normally, when they cry, it will not form the tear of holding. When their lives are about to end, they will cry because of the obsession in their hearts, forming the tear of holding. The greater the obsession, the greater the energy contained in the tear of holding. Long Fei softly said. The tear in his hand was given to his mother by his father and his mother gave it to him. It was given to the royal family by the mermaid race's ancestors to thank the East Qin royal family for saving their lives. So far, it was the tear of holding with the most energy in the mermaid race. What energy? Han Yunqi was very shocked. The Bailey mermaid race was too different from the mermaid race she knew. How was this tear of holding related to whether they could leave the empty lake or not? Long Fei brought her to the empty lake and he actually casually threw the tear of holding into the empty lake. This is the tear of holding with the most energy in the mermaid race. As long as it is placed in the water, the surrounding tear sharks will sense its existence and come over. Long Fei looked at the small lake in the empty lake and softly said, "There is a lake in this lake. It looks empty from afar, but if this king has not guessed wrong, this lake will lead to another water system." You mean? As long as the mermaid race senses the tear of holding, they can find us through the water system? Han Yunqi finally understood Long Fei's meaning. Long Fei nodded. Although he knew about the Lost Void Lake, he had never truly entered it. If he knew that this lake would lead to another water system, he would not have walked through the Lost Void Array. Bai Yanqing and Bai Yuqiao were still waiting outside. Could Long Fei's tear of holding summon reinforcements? Chapter 701. The tear of Ji fell into the lake and very quickly, it sank into the bottomless lake without a sound. Half an hour passed. The poison in the maze hadn't been dispelled, so Long Fei and Han Yunqi both watched and waited in silence. Their surroundings were silent as time passed. Suddenly, a wave rose up from the center of the lake. Soon after, large blue waves surged towards the shores of the lake. Soon, a mermaid soldier emerged from every wave. The one who emerged from the tallest wave was none other than Bailey Yuanlong himself. The last time they'd left Tianning's capital was in the middle of the night, so Han Yunqi hadn't seen anything clearly. This was her first time seeing the mermaids so clearly. She couldn't help but exclaim, "So beautiful." Indeed, they were very beautiful. Their facial features were more defined than usual, their ears like dragon fins standing on either side of their heads. They looked noble and dignified. Their elbows had fins as well, sharp enough to be used as weapons. Their bodies were clad in light blue scales that sparkled with light. They were true nobles. As they floated in the water, they looked like the noblest of warriors as they bowed respectfully to Long Fei and Han Yunqi. "This subordinate came too late to rescue you, may your highness forgive me." Bailey Yuanlong was terrified. He knew that His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't take out the tier of holding unless absolutely necessary. Thus, he'd brought the mermaid soldiers with him as soon as he sensed the summons and found the entrance to the lake as quickly as possible. "We can't stay here for long. Withdraw," Long Fei said. Han Yunshi hadn't even recovered her wits before he carried her into the water. As soon as they entered the water, they were protected by the blue light of the mermaid clan. Inside it, they could breathe freely as if they were walking on flat ground. The mermaid soldiers came ashore and took away Grand Concubine Yi and the unconscious victims of the poison from the City of Daughters. The mermaid soldiers led the way while Bailey Yuanlong personally stood guard by Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi's side. Soon enough, their figures disappeared into the water. As the blue light faded, the lake returned to its usual green. It was as if nothing had happened. Not a single trace was left behind. An hour later, Bai Yanqing slowly opened his eyes. He still took a step into the maze. He did not use the antidote at all, and the poison in the maze disappeared into thin air. Even though he had seen it many times, Bai Yuqiao still could not help but shrink his neck. He felt that his master was so powerful that it was frightening. The poison was gone. Bai Yanqing retreated, but he soon realized that something was wrong. They escaped. Bai Yuqiao stood up in shock. Impossible. Master, I've been watching. They might have escaped. Han Yunshi didn't poison them again. They must have escaped, Bai Yanqing muttered to himself. Master, maybe Han Yunshi is also tired and needs to rest, or she has used up all her poison. Bai Yuqiao explained. Bai Yanqing immediately placed the poison in the poisonous plant. He waited for a long time, but the poison was not removed. They must have escaped. Bai Yanqing was very sure. Master, maybe Han Yunshi can't remove. Before Bai Yuqiao could finish speaking, Bai Yanqing removed the poison he had placed and strode into the maze. Bai Yuqiao quickly chased after him. She did not dare to persuade him, but she was still unconvinced. There was only one path in the lost void lake. She had been watching for 2 hours. How could Han Yunshi and Long Fei Yi slip away under her watch? It was only when Bai Yuqiao followed his master through the maze and saw the empty lake that she was convinced. There was not a single person on the huge empty lake. Where were they? Bai Yuqiao could not figure it out, but Bai Yanqing was not surprised. He stared at the empty lake for a long time, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He muttered to himself, yes, that's it. This trip did not take any effort at all, hee. Bai Yuqiao did not fully understand. Although Bai Yanqing seemed to be in a good mood, she hesitated and did not dare to say anything. Bai Yanqing was indeed in a good mood. He turned around and smiled. Little girl, let's go back. Your senior brother should have sent a letter by now. The master and disciple left through the maze. They had not gone far when Madame Lang Yu came looking for them with Lang Shuangshuang. Old Bai, so you're here. It took me so long to find you. Hurry up and save Shuanger. Madame Lang Yu knew that Bai Yanqing was nearby, but she almost went back to the maze after searching for him. Fortunately, she bumped into his carriage on the way. Bai Yanqing looked up. Madame Lang Yu hurriedly brought the unconscious Lang Shuangshuang over for him to take her pulse. Unfortunately, Bai Yuqiao blocked them. Madame Lang Yu was about to reprimand him, but Bai Yuqiao quickly found the location of the poison on Lang Shuangshuang's body. It was a very thin needle hole. Seeing this, Bai Yanqing did not say anything. Madame Lang Yu could only let Bai Yuqiao do what he wanted. Bai Yuqiao took out a dagger and drew a cross on the needle hole without hesitation. He then took out a magnet and tried to pull out the poison needle that was hidden deep in her flesh. Unexpectedly, Bai Yuqiao tried for a long time but was unable to pull out the poison needle. Bai Yuqiao was very surprised. Master, that Qin Wangfei is too extravagant. The poison needle she used is actually pure gold. Magnets can't pull it out. Whether it was medical needles or poison needles, although many were called golden needles, gold was just a general term. The so-called golden needles were not pure gold. Most of them were mixed with a lot of iron, so they could be pulled out with magnets. Pure golden needles were very rare, especially those that were used as hidden weapons. Han Yunxi was probably the first one. Hee, interesting. Bai Yanqing was reading a book in the carriage. He was very relaxed. Madame Lang Yu was anxious. What should we do if we can't pull it out? Bai Yanqing did not say anything. Bai Yuqiao did not say anything either. She held the dagger and stabbed it into the wound without hesitation. She dug downwards and forcibly dug out the poison needle that was buried deep in the flesh. Although Bai Yuqiao often felt sorry for her senior brother, she was definitely a ruthless person. Ling Shuangshuang, who was unconscious, was in so much pain that she opened her eyes and only closed them after a while. Even though Madame Lang Yu was an assassin, she still sucked in a cold breath. Bai Yuqiao, how dare you? Bai Yuqiao ignored Madame Lang Yu. She sniffed the poison needle and then the bloody wound. She muttered to herself, this poison isn't hard to detoxify. She quickly concocted the antidote and randomly applied it on Ling Shuangshuang's wound. Take this medicine back. Don't apply it on the wound. Take it orally 3 times a day. Help her stop the bleeding. Madame Lang Yu roared. If it wasn't for Bai Yanqing, she would have killed this brat long ago. Bai Yuqiao took out a needle and thread and sewed the wound as if she was sewing clothes. Ling Shuangshuang suddenly screamed and fainted again before she could wake up. Why is an assassin so pretentious? Bai Yuqiao mocked her disdainfully. Madame Lang Yu looked on coldly. When Bai Yuqiao finished sewing up the wound, she immediately slapped her. Brat, do you believe that I won't bring you back to the City of Daughters with me if you keep talking nonsense? Murderous intent flashed across Bai Yuqiao's eyes. Just as she was about to make a move, Bai Yanqing coughed lightly. She could only grit her teeth and swallow her blood. Shuanger's poison is detoxified just like that? Madame Lang Yu asked. Why? Are you still doubting old man's ability to teach his disciple? Bai Yanqing asked coldly. Madame Lang Yu didn't dare to act rashly. Thank you. Bai Yanqing gestured for Madame Lang Yu to get into the car. Madame Lang Yu carried Ling Shuangshuang into the car and sat at the side. Bai Yuqiao felt wronged, but he could only drive obediently. Old Bai, Han Yunxi used the same method you used to break the lost formation. Her poison skills. Who taught her? Madame Lang Yu asked curiously. Bai Yanqing stroked his beard and didn't answer, but he was more interested than Madame Lang Yu. Madame Lang Yu and Bai Yanqing were both friends and master and servant. She didn't dare to be too impudent, so she didn't press the issue when Bai Yanqing didn't answer. After a long silence, Bai Yanqing asked, have you explained everything to Duan Muyao? Don't worry. Even if Duan Muyao loses her life, she won't say a word. After all, she's on the same boat as us, Madame Lang Yu said seriously. What about Grand Concubine Yi? Bai Yanqing asked next. Don't worry. She won't wake up anymore, Madame Lang Yu smiled. Bai Yanqing was very satisfied. He took Madame Lang Yu's hand and patted it lightly. Very good. Originally, the Empress Dowager of Tian and country had wanted to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. After Bai Yanqing found out, he had Madame Lang Yu kidnap Grand Concubine Yi, then find Duan Muyao to blackmail Long Fei Yi. This way, Long Fei Yi wouldn't suspect the Empress Dowager, nor would he have to worry about his identity being exposed. Old Bai, what did Grand Concubine Yi say? Madame Lang Yu asked curiously. She only knew of Bai Yanqing's plans, but had no idea what Bai Yanqing wanted from Grand Concubine Yi. It was Bai Yanqing himself who had interrogated Grand Concubine Yi that day. Besides him, no one else knew the truth. Bai Yanqing quickly released Madame Lang Yu's hand. That, you don't need to know. Madame Lang Yu sighed. What a pity. We couldn't kill Han Yunxi, but lost Duan Muyao instead. Yu Qiao, you've lost. Remember to deduct a month's worth of allowance when you go back. Bai Yanqing laughed out loud. He'd made a bet with Bai Yu Qiao before coming here to see if Madame Lang Yu could kill Han Yunxi. Yes. Bai Yu Qiao felt even more wronged, but her expression was gloomy. She didn't cry. How could a child like her cry? Old Bai, you didn't want to kill that girl. That girl's abilities were truly incredible. If we leave her alive, she'll be a disaster in the future. Madame Lang Yu reminded him. That's a matter for the future. Bai Yanqing chuckled. Losing Duan Miao. That old man Kenzo will find trouble with Long Fei Yi himself. Don't worry. I'm just afraid that before that old man Kenzo finds trouble with Long Fei Yi, that brat will find the City of Daughters first. Of the 30 experts in the City of Daughters, only 2 or 3 are left. Madame Lang Yu's tone became heavy. If they could kill Long Fei Yi in this battle, the City of Daughters' reputation would definitely soar. What a pity. What? Are you scared? Bai Yanqing smiled. Not to the extent of being scared. Madame Lang Yu wasn't putting up a strong front. The City of Daughters foundation was still very strong. Bai Yanqing was very satisfied. Old man, send the 2 of you back. Madame Lang Yu was overjoyed. All her gloominess immediately dissipated. It was impossible to say that she hadn't fallen in love with Bai Yanqing. Unfortunately, Bai Yanqing still kept his distance from her. The carriage slowly moved away. At this time, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had already returned to the land. They were still a distance away from Lost Void Lake. This waterway was deep and long, so it wasn't easy to travel. We're finally safe. Han Yunxi sighed. Bailey Yuanlong, go back and make arrangements. This prince will set off in 3 days and take a detour to Dongjing County, Long Fei Yi said. Bailey Yuanlong was shocked. Weren't they supposed to leave at the end of the month? There were still 10 days until the end of the month. Take a detour to Dongjing. That was the direction to the City of Daughters. Chapter 702. His Highness Duke of Qin wanted to take a detour to Celestial Mountain through East Jing Prefecture, which was the only way to get to the City of Daughters. Your Highness, are you going to the City of Daughters? Bailey Yuanlong asked. Your lordship won't let anyone who dares to kidnap someone from the Duke of Qin's estate go, Long Fei Yi said. Han Yunxi remained silent on the side. Even if Long Fei Yi didn't seek Lady Lang Yu out, she'd persuade Long Fei Yi to do it herself. After all, this matter involved not only Duan Muyao and Lady Lang Yu, but that poison's expert as well. All right, this soldier will make arrangements as soon as I return. Bailey Yuanlong was a soldier, so he wasn't like Chu Shifeng. Even if he had doubts, he obeyed without question. After returning to South Ning Prefecture, Long Fei Yi mulled things over for an entire night before delaying his departure time. He had to wait for Chu Shifeng to return from Tianan. Someone come, send a flying pigeon to Chu Shifeng. Tell him to bring Murong Wanru back, no matter the method, immediately, he ordered cold. You mean? Han Yunxi didn't understand. This matter isn't that simple, Long Fei Yi intoned. On the surface, Duan Muyao seemed to be the mastermind who kidnapped Grand Concubine Yi to threaten him, but he had a feeling that things weren't that simple. How is it not simple? Han Yunxi asked. Duanmu Yao might be stupid, but Lady Ling Yu isn't. They wouldn't really take Grand Concubine Yi to Lost Void Lake, Long Fei Yi intoned. Although he hadn't sensed Sangchozi's movements back then, he had sensed the Celestial Mountain servant girls hiding in the woods. He never expected Grand Concubine Yi to be there. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have wasted so much words with Duanmu Yao. Han Yunxi came to a realization at his words. She gave Long Fei Yi a thumbs up, her face full of admiration. This guy was even more meticulous than a doctor like her to notice such details. That's right, Duanmu Yao might be stupid, but Lady Ling Yu wasn't. Duanmu Yao's goal was not the profound frost sword, but to kill her so that she could have Long Fei Yi heal her. How could he be so honest as to bring the hostage there? Facing an expert like Long Fei Yi, no matter what, he had to be on guard. If that's the case, then it's possible that they returned Grand Concubine Yi to us on purpose. Han Yunxi asked doubtfully. Why would they return her to us? Han Yunxi thought for a while and asked, what are they trying to mislead us about? There must be a conspiracy. Long Fei Yi rubbed her bangs lovingly. He liked to discuss problems with this woman more and more. She was very smart and could understand with just a little bit, so he didn't have to spend too much effort to explain. It's just a guess. Bringing Murong Wanru here was the safest option. Only Grand Concubine Yi knows the truth. No matter what the truth was, Long Fei Yi only cared about one thing, whether or not Grand Concubine Yi could reveal the secret of him not being part of Tianning's imperial bloodline. Murong Wanru was the key to making Grand Concubine Yi tell the truth. By now, it was already daybreak. After breakfast, Zhao Mama came to report, Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, Grand Concubine hasn't woken up yet. On the way back, Han Yunxi had inspected Grand Concubine Yi's body. First, she hadn't been poisoned, injured, or ill. Everything was normal. She guessed that Grand Concubine Yi had been frightened and would wake up after a day or so, so she left her in Zhao Mama's care. She hasn't woken up yet. That can't be, right? Han Yunxi grew uneasy. I'll go take a look. Long Fei Yi went with her as well. Grand Concubine Yi was placed in the room behind the ancestral hall. She lay quietly on the bed as if she was sleeping peacefully. Han Yunxi carefully examined her again, but still didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Still, nothing out of the ordinary was the biggest anomaly. She made a prompt decision. Long Fei Yi, looks like we'll have to send someone to find Gu Beiyue. After Gu Beiyue arrived, he did the same examination on Grand Concubine Yi as Han Yunxi did. Still, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. How long has she been unconscious? He asked seriously. She was unconscious when I saw her yesterday afternoon. It's impossible to determine the time before that, Han Yunxi replied. Let's wait a bit longer. If she doesn't wake up by tonight, then the problem will be bigger. A complicated look flitted past Gu Beiyue's eyes before he added, let this one accompany esteemed imperial concubine today. It'll be easier to observe her. Then I'll leave it to you. Long Fei Yi said as he led Han Yunxi out the door. He didn't want Gu Beiyue to know too much about his lack of Tianning's imperial bloodline. He'd have to reveal his identity one day, but now wasn't the right time. There were some things that couldn't be explained with words. Only actions could convince people. The trip to Celestial Mountain was fraught with dangers, so he didn't want to cause too much trouble for himself. If it was only a guess before, Han Yunxi was certain now. Grand Concubine Yi's coma must have been caused by someone. They must have gotten something out of her. Long Fei Yi's eyes darkened as he walked slowly with his head bowed. Long Fei Yi, this has to be a trap. It has to be. Han Yunxi said again. Long Feiyi finally spoke up. The key is, who's the one who set this trap? If Grand Concubine Yi didn't wake up, they wouldn't be able to confirm anything even if they knew this was a trap. This matter should have nothing to do with Tian'an's Empress Dowager. Just who was it that suspected his origins, and how? Long Feiyi couldn't figure out where the problem lay. Where had he exposed himself to arouse suspicion? For now, all they could do was wait. A few days later, Chu Shifeng brought Murong Wanru back, but Grand Concubine Yi was still unconscious. Gu Beiyue was at his wit's end as well. He said, under these circumstances, there must be some sort of injury to the head. But this one can't figure it out yet. Then can you figure it out or not? How long will it take? Long Feiyi asked. There's no way to confirm, Gu Beiyue admitted. Long Feiyi paused, then said, I'll leave this matter to you. Leave Pill Fiend Pharmacy to Mu Ling for now. You'll live in the ancestral hall. Han Yunxi looked at the unconscious mother and daughter pair and sighed with emotion. When she first entered the Duke of Qin's estate, she'd suffered quite a bit at their hands. Fate made fools of people. She never thought they'd end up like this, much less themselves. I'll listen to your highness's arrangements. Gu Beiyue's words had a hidden meaning. Long Feiyi wanted Gu Beiyue to live in the ancestral hall because it was easier for Gu Beiyue to communicate with the Shadow Guard. The war between the three nations was still ongoing, so they had to keep an eye on Chu Tianing's situation. Chu Shifeng brought back Murong Wanru along with another piece of news. Your Highness, Jun Yixia went to the Winter Crow country. I'm afraid he went to buy horses with Northern Li's Crown Prince and Second Imperial Prince. The Crown Prince and Second Imperial Prince are traveling together. Long Feiyi laughed coldly. Has the poison in his shoulder been treated? This subordinate really couldn't find anything. Chu Shifeng found himself in a dilemma. This time, he'd lost quite a few subordinates after finding out that Northern Li had sent an envoy to the Winter Crow country. Jun Yixia's own subordinates might not even know about the poison, so how could outsiders find out? Long Feiyi didn't speak, but flipped to the Wind Clan page in his Annals of the Seven Noble Families. Bailey Yuanlong and Chu Shifeng stood on either side of him, reading the Wind Clan's records clearly. The Wind Clan was familiar with astronomy and geography, as well as the art of divination. They were skilled at controlling the wind and using it to lay out traps and move troops. Seeing this record, the two of them looked at each other in dismay. They only knew that the Wind Clan was skilled in astronomy and could predict the weather. That was why they'd relied on them for grain production in the past. They never expected the Wind Clan to have such skills beyond astronomy. Divination, controlling the wind. Long Feiyi muttered to himself, lost in thought. After a while, he said coldly, Bailey Yuanlong, prepare to send troops north at any time. Yes. Bailey Yuanlong obeyed. Your Highness, why don't we slow down a bit before going to Celestial Mountain? I'm afraid there'll be trouble this fall. Chu Shifeng coaxed. If I don't go, there'll be more problems, Long Feiyi said. At Lost Void Lake, Zhang Qiuzi had clearly been hiding nearby, but waited until Duanmu Yao was seriously injured to save her. Without a doubt, he was trying to keep Duanmu Yao in check. His master was in the midst of frequent bouts of illness. If he didn't go now, his master would be in danger. Moreover, Zhang Qiuzi and Duanmu Yao had not only hooked up with the City of Daughters, but that poison's expert as well. Whether the power of the imperial court affected the Jianghu, or whether the Jianghu's power affected the court, was a question worth pondering. Either way, it showed the importance of keeping the Jianghu under control. Once Zhang Qiuzi gained the upper hand, the Jianghu's power would be fully involved in the court struggles. His years of planning would be thrown into disarray. There was no avoiding this trip to Celestial Mountain. Then this subordinate will go make preparations. Chu Shifeng didn't have time to leave before Long Feiyi refused. Just have Su Donglin come with you. You stay behind. I'll leave Gu Beiyue's safety to you. If anything happens, your lordship will hold you accountable. Your Highness. Chu Shifeng panicked. Long Feiyi wouldn't pay him any attention, so he asked coldly, have you delivered the gift for the City of Daughters yet? Yes. Chu Shifeng replied helplessly. What's the situation with Tangli? Long Feiyi asked next. I heard he took Ning Jing out on a trip. He said something about. Chu Shifeng thought for a long time before he remembered the words. Something about a honeymoon after marriage. Your Highness, young clan head Tang's trying to find a way to leave the Tang clan. Chu Shifeng assumed that His Highness would stop asking questions about pleasing a woman, but His Highness asked again, how long? 1 month. Supposedly it's a sweet month, so they call it a honeymoon in short, Chu Shifeng explained in detail. On the side, General Bailey felt uneasy at the words. Your Highness, you must take care of yourself on the road. This soldier will wait for your return, he said with a respectful salute before leaving. Your Highness, that brat Su Donglin's never been to Celestial Mountain before. Moreover, you're going to the City of Daughters on the way as well. Why don't you? Before Chu Shifeng could finish, Long Feiyi had already risen to his feet and left the room. When he reached the corner of the corridor, he paused to glance at Leisurely Cloud Pavilion, only to see that it was still dim. They were leaving tomorrow, so Han Yunshi should still be at Pill Fiend Pharmacy. He'd said he'd reward her when he returned, but she hadn't asked. She must have forgotten, hadn't she? Long Feiyi smiled helplessly. He didn't go to Pill Fiend Pharmacy to find Han Yunshi, but went to the Ancestral Hall instead. Perhaps it was because of Gu Beiyue's arrival, but the cold and quiet Ancestral Hall was now especially peaceful. Even the lights were warm. By the time Long Feiyi arrived, Gu Beiyue was sitting cross-legged on a prayer mat, looking up at a Buddha statue. His thin profile was illuminated by the lamplight, while his calm eyes were filled with piety. Long Feiyi had already walked up behind him without him noticing. You believe in Buddhism too? Long Feiyi asked. Chapter 703. Although Long Feiyi's arrival was sudden, Gu Beiyue remained calm. He stood up and bowed, modest and elegant. Your Highness Duke of Qin, there must be something important for you to visit so late at night, right? You also believe in Buddhism. What are you praying for? Long Feiyi asked again. Praying. Gu Beiyue thought for a moment, then joked, praying for an afterlife. This life hasn't ended yet, so why are you in such a rush to seek an afterlife? Long Feiyi asked. Gu Beiyue replied with a smile, Buddha says that suffering in this life is all for the sake of freedom in the afterlife, so we must endure suffering. Long Feiyi gave a cold laugh. You believe in this kind of foolish Buddha? This one doesn't believe in Buddhism. This one believes in fate. No matter how sad his words were, Gu Beiyue could always finish them with a smile. If there was an afterlife, he hoped that the Gu family and the Shadow clan would have nothing to do with each other. He hoped that he could only be himself. Your Highness, do you believe in fate? He asked softly. Fate? Long Feiyi had always disdained this kind of thing. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. This king doesn't believe in anything but myself. If he believed in fate, if he obeyed, what would happen to Han Yunshi? East Qin wasn't his fate, but Han Yunshi was his fate. This king will leave South Ning tomorrow, Long Feiyi said. If it is within this one's power, please give your orders, Your Highness. Gu Beiyue was very serious. Han Yunshi had told him many things before, so he knew that Long Feiyi would also come. Who would have thought that Long Fei-yi wouldn't tell him anything about the South Central Military Governor's manor, only telling him one thing. He said, "If this king doesn't leave the Heavenly Mountain on Mid-Autumn Day, you must protect Han Yunxi for this king." When these words were said, Gu Beiyue's heart, which had been calm his entire life, fiercely skipped a beat. It was especially painful. He didn't want to believe in fate, but after all the twists and turns, it was fate. No matter how much his heart hurt, he remained calm. No matter how sad his words were, he would still smile. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, what do you mean by guard? I'm already half a cripple, and I still need bodyguard choose protection. I can't bear your Highness's trust," he asked seriously. "As long as she trusts you, you can handle it." Long Fei-yi was very certain. "You only need to guard her and don't let her leave South Ning. Wait for this prince to return." Gu Beiyue understood. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, the war-torn three countries should be lacking in provisions. The commander-in-chief's manor in Zhongnan was bound to make a big move. If Long Fei-yi could not return, given Han Yunxi's temperament, she would certainly shoulder all of this and would not hesitate to charge and break through enemy lines. It seemed easy to make Han Yunxi stay in South Ning, but in reality, not only did he need to persuade her, he also needed to help her firmly grasp Cloud Realm's situation in his hands. Zhongnan's commander-in-chief's manor didn't lack military strength or wealth. What they lacked was a strategist who could see through Long Fei-ye's plans and could catch Long Fei-ye's eye. Without a doubt, Long Fei-yi had chosen Gu Beiyue the same way as Han Yunxi. Gu Beiyue didn't hesitate at all. "This one will not refuse. I only hope that your Highness's trip will go smoothly." Gu Beiyue was actually well aware of the situation on Celestial Mountain. He knew everything in the world and could also scheme against it. Everything was in his heart, but he had never revealed it. Long Fei-yi nodded and turned to leave. He was only being cautious tonight. He had to do his best to leave Celestial Mountain before the Mid-Autumn Festival. At this time, Han Yunxi had just left Pill Fiend Pharmacy. "Mistress, please take me with you. I promise I'll be obedient." Su Xiaoyu begged the entire way from the rooms, but Bailey Mingxiang only said, "Take care." She didn't say anything else. Han Yunxi couldn't be bothered to reply to Su Xiaoyu, so she waved a hand to cut her off. "Mistress, Xiaoyu is begging you, mistress. What are you making so much noise for? The new batch of ingredients is the best of the best. Hurry up and put them away," Mu Ling said as she grabbed Su Xiaoyu by the back of her collar and dragged her to the side. Su Xiaoyu looked pitifully at Han Yunxi, but Han Yunxi said seriously, "Dr. Gu isn't free right now. You and Mingxiang can stay at Pill Fiend Pharmacy to help out." "Yes." Bailey Mingxiang respectfully curtsied. Su Xiaoyu had no choice but to say, "Oh." After Han Yunxi left, Mu Ling personally pulled Su Xiaoyu into the room. Unfortunately, not long after, Mu Ling wasn't paying attention and Su Xiaoyu snuck out the door to chase after the carriage. Unfortunately, the sports car sped up and she couldn't catch up. She didn't dare to chase back to the Duke of Qin's estate. The person she feared the most was His Highness Duke of Qin. If His Highness Duke of Qin allowed her to pester esteemed Wang Fei, the consequences would be unimaginable. Su Xiaoyu was extremely disappointed. Her head drooped as she walked back, crestfallen. Unexpectedly, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Madame Helene. She was suspicious. Just as she was about to take a closer look, the figure had already disappeared into the alley. "It's so late. Where did she go?" Su Xiaoyu immediately chased after her. Unfortunately, she still didn't see her even when she reached the end of the alley. "Where did she go?" She suspiciously raised her head to look at the surrounding rooftops. After looking for a while, she tilted her head to rest on her shoulder. She muttered to herself, she flew to the rooftops. She can fly. Thus, she immediately leaped onto the rooftops. Unfortunately, the surroundings were empty. Not even a shadow could be seen. She sat on the rooftop and muttered to herself, did I recognize the wrong person? Soon, she denied her own thoughts. It's her. After thinking for a while, she hesitated. Is that so? In the end, even she was annoyed. She thought to herself that she should find time to go to the Han estate and personally test Madame Hellion. Then she would know whether she had recognized the wrong person or if Madame Hellion really was up to something. As for how to test her, she quickly thought of it. As the night deepened, the last of the hustle and bustle on the streets quieted down. The entire world seemed to have entered dreamland. The lights in Leisurely Cloud Pavilion lit up. Han Yunxi stood in front of the pavilion's windowsill. She almost couldn't remember how long it had been since she stood here. Standing here, she could see the lights in Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters. As always, the lights in his room had been extinguished. She seemed to be addicted to standing and didn't feel sleepy at all. She simply poured herself a cup of tea and drank it slowly while leaning against the windowsill to wake herself up. The stars in the sky were the breath of summer. Currently, Long Fei Yi hadn't gone to bed, but was still in his study. The Annals of the Seven Noble Families was on his desk, flipped to the page about the Wind Clan and held down by a black sandalwood bookmark. He was sitting in his chair, leaning back with it until his slender legs rested on the windowsill. His hands were propped up behind his head. From this angle, he could see Han Yunxi's beautiful figure through the window of Leisurely Cloud Pavilion. Han Yunxi still didn't know this secret. Of course, she had no idea how many nights she'd spent looking at Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters while Long Fei Yi stared at her from a distance and pondered over her origins. Only Chu Shifeng knew that His Highness Duke of Qin, who rarely returned to the Duke of Qin's estate, had been coming home every night. Han Yunxi, how long did it take you to fall in love with Long Fei Yi? Long Fei Yi spent countless sleepless nights to fall in love with you. Han Yunxi didn't know how long she'd been standing there, but she fell asleep as soon as her head hit the bed. In her dreams, she could faintly feel someone scratching her face. She opened her eyes groggily and saw Long Fei Yi standing by the bed, gently stroking her cheek. What did you do last night? Still not getting up? He looked down at her from above. Actually, she'd closed the windows last night before he went to sleep. He knew everything she'd done. Frightened, Han Yunxi looked out the window and saw that it was already dawn. If they wanted to leave in secret, they'd have to get up early. Han Yunxi was about to rise when she covered herself with the covers again. Before she could speak, Long Fei Yi understood and turned to go downstairs. I'll wait for you to eat downstairs. Han Yunxi assumed that he'd come up the stairs and silently cursed Xiao Mama for not waking her up. Actually, Xiao Mama had been given a fright when Long Fei Yi came down the stairs. Did His Highness Duke of Qin sneak in through the window again last night? These two masters were so strange. They had such a big sleeping quarters and such a wide, round bed, but they didn't make love. Instead, they squeezed together on the single bed in the little loft. What kind of hobby was that? By the time Han Yunxi finished washing up and came downstairs, Xiao Mama was giving her a dubious look. Han Yunxi found it strange that she was being stared at. Is something the matter? Han Yunxi asked suspiciously. No, nothing, Xiao Mama shook her head with a smile. Then what are you looking at? Han Yunxi asked next. Esteemed Wang Fei's complexion is pretty good, but you still need to nourish yourself, Xiao Mama said with a chuckle. My complexion is pretty good. What do I need to nourish myself with? At the thought of the old hen, Han Yunxi didn't even have the appetite to eat breakfast. Nourishing your body. Your Highness is full of vigor and vitality, Xiao Mama said in a low voice. What does that have to do with nourishing my body? Han Yunxi suddenly understood. She narrowed her eyes and was about to teach Xiao Mama a lesson when she saw Long Fei Yi walk over. She immediately withered and pretended that nothing had happened. Your Highness, the carriage is already waiting at the back door. This old servant has already told Su Donglin and Uncle Gao about the food and lodging arrangements. The Dongjing River has risen, so we can use the ferry. If we set off today, we'll arrive at the City of Daughters within 7 days. Xiao Mama didn't dare to disturb them and retreated. What were you talking about just now? Long Fei Yi asked. Nothing. Han Yunxi didn't dare to say anything. She silently ate her breakfast. As she ate, she couldn't help but look at Long Fei Yi. The 2 words that Xiao Mama had just said kept appearing in her mind. Full of vigor and vitality, this guy, does he have that? Long Fei Yi was clearly eating seriously, but suddenly asked, what are you looking at? Nothing. I didn't sleep well last night. Han Yunxi didn't have the guts to ask what she was thinking. Actually, there was no need to ask. She'd experience it for herself in the future. After breakfast, they arrived at the back door to see Gu Beiyue waiting for them in his wheelchair. He was dressed in white robes and looked as beautiful as an immortal on Celestial Mountain under the morning sun, untainted by dust. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, have a smooth journey. He wished from the bottom of his heart. He took out the sleeping Lil Thing from his wide sleeves. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't leave Lil Thing behind. It's comparable to a fierce general. Lil Thing had no idea that Mama Yunxi and Papa Long were going to Celestial Mountain. It woke up in a daze and looked at Mama Yunxi, then at the gentleman, before finally resting its gaze on Papa Long. Although it wasn't as frightened as before, it was still crestfallen. It was about to slip into Mama Yunxi's sleeves when it caught sight of the carriage and realized that Mama Yunxi was about to set off. Although it didn't want to part with the gentleman, it should return to Mama Yunxi's side. Its first duty was to protect Mama Yunxi. Lil Thing waved at Gu Beiyue, causing Gu Beiyue to laugh and wave back. When Lil Thing saw Gu Beiyue smile, it wanted to wave at him until the end of time. But it was afraid of Papa Long and didn't dare to wave for long. Soon enough, it hid in the medical pouch. Before they left, Han Yunxi said, Gu Beiyue, when we come back, will you still be here to receive us? Stand and receive us. No, Gu Beiyue said seriously. This one will stand by the city gates and wait. Please come back safely. Chapter 704. Once they set off, Long Fei Yi asked Han Yunxi, aren't you going to ask for your reward from this prince? It was already a great honor to receive a reward from him, but this woman had forgotten about it and even needed him to remind her personally. If the Duke of Qin's admirers found out about this, Han Yunxi would probably be killed several times over by the looks of envy, jealousy, and hatred. Although Han Yunxi was so busy that she forgot, she still cleverly replied, Your Highness Duke of Qin is a man of his word. If you say you'll reward me, then you'll definitely reward me. If this concubine asks for more, wouldn't I be questioning your highness's credibility? Long Fei Yi knew she was quibbling, but he also liked her flattery. He dotingly tousled her hair and laughed heartily. Just wait for the big reward. How big is it? Han Yunxi's heart was moved. Actually, she'd been spoiled rotten by Long Fei Yi. In this world, only Long Fei Yi's rewards could catch her eye. Very big. Just wait patiently. Long Fei Yi finally seized the chance to whet Han Yunxi's appetite, but Han Yunxi didn't press the issue. She smiled and said, all right, I'll be looking forward to it. That's it. It wasn't that she wasn't curious, but that she knew he wouldn't say anything just to whet her appetite. Instead of being curious, it was better to look forward to it. In any case, this guy had never disappointed her before. Soon, Han Yunxi leaned against Long Fei Ye's shoulder to sleep. She looked like she was sleeping, but she was actually cultivating diligently. It was completely different from the cultivation of martial arts and Nigong. The cultivation of the poison storage space was a kind of mental cultivation, and the activation of the poison storage space also consumed mental strength. Actually, her cultivation speed was much faster than any of the poison sect's direct descendants who'd activated the poison storage space. But she still felt that it wasn't enough. Ever since she'd met that poison expert at Lost Void Lake, she'd felt a sense of urgency. Whether that poison expert was the previous head of the 100 Poison Sect, the orphan of the Poison Sect, or some other expert of the poison world that they didn't know about, she couldn't let her guard down. She couldn't help Long Fei Yi much in other aspects, but in terms of poison, she had to make sure he didn't have to worry. Long Fei Yi turned his head to look at Han Yunxi. He saw that she was not curious at all and had fallen asleep so quickly. He had a helpless look on his face. He really couldn't do anything about this woman. Heading north, Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi soon arrived at Dongjing County. Dongjing County belonged to the Tianan country. It was the eastern border between the Tianan country and the Commander-in-Chief's manor in the south. Dongjing County was traversed by a large river that ran from east to west. This river was called the Dongjing River. Rather than saying that Dongjing County was the only way to get to the City of Daughters, it was better to say that Dongjing River was the only way to get to the City of Daughters. If one followed the river downstream, they would easily reach the middle section of the river, where the City of Daughters was hidden deep in a canyon. Long Fei Yi had already arranged for a large ship. He and Han Yunxi got off the carriage and switched to the ship. The carriage was also brought on board and followed them. Following the river downstream, they saw endless canyon scenery. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi stood on the deck and looked at the surging river and towering mountains. They both felt that the City of Daughters was a good place. Long Fei Yi, have you been there before? Han Yunxi asked. No. Thus, he had his servants arrange the route and prepare a ship beforehand. Even if he hadn't been here before, he knew everything. A city hidden deep in the mountains. It really is a good place to raise soldiers, Han Yunxi said seriously. The City of Daughters and Carefree City were places where assassins and mercenaries gathered. The City of Daughters favored women over men, while Carefree City favored men over women. The two cities were filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were lone assassins who didn't belong to any organization, as well as powerful assassin clans. The Lang and Qi clans that ruled over the two cities were the oldest assassin clans in Cloud Realm continent. Han Yunxi knew that Long Fei Yi wouldn't come so easily without sufficient preparations. But by the time Long Fei Yi brought her to the gates of the City of Daughters, she was still frightened by the Long Fei Yi's preparations. The towering city gate was tightly shut, and dozens of corpses were lined up in 3 rows at the city gate. These were the corpses they brought back from Lost Void Lake. Behind the corpse, there were 3 groups of people. 2 of them were dressed in black, and it was obvious that they were organized. The people in the other group were uneven and dressed differently. They looked like a group of people, but they were actually scattered. Lady Lang Yu led a large group of people on top of the city gate tower, facing off against the 3 groups outside the city. Han Yunxi was even more shocked when she saw them. She recognized the 2 groups of black-clothed men and horses. Wasn't the group on the left the strongest swordsman of Long Fei Yi's shadow guard? There were about 50 of them, all hand-picked by Long Fei Yi from Tianshan Kenzo's ranks and personally trained them. Han Yunxi had seen the 10 leaders before when they fought Duan Muyao. They were all well-known figures in Tianshan Kenzo. The group on the left had about 30 people. Although they were all dressed in black, the insignia on their backs was that of Carefree City's Qi clan. Han Yunxi recognized Qi Yaotian as soon as she saw him. The guy was the heir to the mayor of Carefree City. His strength was extraordinary. However, judging from his position in the group, he was not at the front. He was only in the middle. It was enough to show that at least half of the 30 people from Carefree City were stronger and more influential than Qi Yaotian. If it weren't for the plain clothes of the man standing at the front, Han Yunxi would have thought that the mayor of Carefree City had come in person. "You're working with the people of Carefree City?" Han Yunxi asked in disbelief. "No, I'm hiring them," Long Feiyi said. Collaboration required a compromise and a share of the spoils of war. On the other hand, employment was just a matter of paying. The top 3 elders of the Qi clan of Carefree City and their sons, as well as the elders of a few assassin families, are here. "This battle will be very exciting," Long Feiyi said with a smile. He was in a good mood. Hiring. Han Yunxi had seen a lot of things, but she was still shocked by Long Feiyi's generosity. The guy was hiring the elites of Carefree City to deal with the City of Daughters. Although the two cities were on opposite sides, they had never fought each other before. Nobody was capable enough to persuade the mayor of Carefree City to agree to the deal either. It must be noted that once the two cities fought each other, it would certainly overturn the world of assassins and mercenaries. It might even affect the entire martial arts world. However, if she thought about it carefully, only Long Feiyi was capable enough to hire Carefree City. The deal had nothing to do with the commission. It only had to do with the strength of the employer. Carefree City had long wanted to destroy the City of Daughters and dominate the world of assassins. However, with their own strength, they could only be on par with the City of Daughters. Now that they had met such a tough employer like Long Feiyi, who offered both the commission and the effort, why wouldn't Carefree City do it? In Long Feiyi's eyes, it was just a hire. But in the mayor of Carefree City's eyes, it was cooperation. "Who are the other people?" Han Yunxi asked in a low voice. "They are from the martial arts world. The City of Daughters has offended a lot of people over the years. They are all taking the opportunity to seek revenge," Long Feiyi answered. Han Yunxi did not know when Long Feiyi had posted the news in the martial arts world. She smiled. "That saved me a lot of money." The City of Daughters did not dare to open the door to accept the challenge even after a long time. It was enough to show the difference in strength. Han Yunxi had thought that the battle with the City of Daughters would take a lot of time. But now, it seemed that it would not. She thought that Long Feiyi would probably be recorded in the history of assassins in Cloud Realm. He was not an assassin, but he was about to rewrite the history of the world of assassins. As the carriage slowly drove past, the 3 groups of people opened up a path for them. Under everyone's gazes, Long Fei personally carried Han Yunxi off the carriage. In an instant, the 3 teams all saluted them. The Shadow Guard knelt on one knee. The people of Carefree City and the martial arts world all clasped their hands in front of their chest. They were very respectful. On the city gate tower, Ling Shuangshuang, who had already recovered, saw this scene. She looked at Han Yunxi and was already in complete despair. 3 years ago, she had looked down on this woman. Now, she was so excellent and honorable that she did not even have the right to be jealous. And that man had come today to seek revenge. She could no longer love him. Long Feiyi waved his hand, indicating for the Shadow Guard to rise. He merely nodded at the people of Carefree City and the martial arts world and did not return the greeting. He had never been a polite person. Besides, he had the right to be rude. He looked up at Madame Lengyu, who was on the city gate, and asked coldly, "Why are you not coming out to collect the corpse?" Madame Lengyu had long known that Long Feiyi would come to seek revenge. However, she never expected that he would hire people from Carefree City and bring so many people with him. It had to be said that Madame Lengyu, who had always been proud, began to panic the moment she saw Long Fei get off the carriage. She knew that Long Fei's arrival meant that the confrontation was over. They would attack the city. Madame Lengyu, these are the children who worked for the Leng family. You don't even clean up their corpses. Do you think you deserve to be the city lord? The one who spoke was the leader of the Carefree City Elders, Third Master Qi, who was known in the martial arts world as Third Master Qi. He. Since when did Carefree City become the lackey of King Qin's residence? Congratulations. Madame Lengyu said coldly. Even though she was afraid, she did not show any signs of backing down. You are only working for others because you are paid. Madame Lengyu, you are in the same line of work. Why do you have to speak so harshly? Do you want to establish a chastity monument after becoming a whore? Third Master Qi laughed. Third Master Qi. Madame Lengyu was furious. Come down if you have the guts. Third Master Qi continued to provoke. At this time, the group of people who were seeking revenge in the martial arts world also began to denounce Madame Lengyu. Lengyu, come down and die. Today, old man will avenge the brothers of the Blue Cloud sect who died. Lengyu, come down if you have the guts. You killed the eldest disciple of Evergreen Mountain. You must pay with your life. Lengyu, do you remember the murder case in Snow Listening Mountain Villa 5 years ago? Today, old man will kill you to avenge my elder sister's family and rid the martial arts world of evil. Han Yunxi listened with a hint of mockery on her lips. Whether it was the imperial court or the martial arts world, there were always so many righteous people. Today, these people were relying on the power of Long Fei in Carefree City to seek revenge, but they kept saying that they were upholding justice. Today, they were merely taking revenge. If they wanted to seek revenge, so be it. Why did they have to call it upholding justice? She thought that no matter how many people were killed or injured today, once the news spread, there would be no condemnation in the martial arts world. There would only be songs of praise. What was justice? Strength was justice. Victory was justice. The truth could be hidden. History could be changed. Only victory and defeat were real. The world was so realistic. You could not change it. However, you could work hard to become strong. One day, you would be able to control all the rules. Han Yunxi rejoiced at the fact that the man by her side had enough strength to do so. Long Fei was not as weak as those people of the martial arts world. He said coldly, Lengyu, I am here for revenge today. Are you coming down to fight me, or will I massacre the city? Chapter 705. Everyone gasped. Even the people of Liberty City were intimidated. The city gate was in an uproar. Madame Lengyu's face darkened. Massacre the city. How cruel. Han Yunxi was also trembling. But this was Long Fei's style, wasn't it? Since he had taken a detour to come here, there was no way he would be merciful. Massacring the city was cruel, but which one of the people in the city wasn't cruel? Which one of them wasn't a professional killer who killed without batting an eye? Which one of them hadn't committed a few massacres? Which one of them knew about filial piety, loyalty, propriety, justice, integrity, and shame? They only had one creed in life: kill for money. Han Yunxi was a doctor, but in the face of such a force, she had already restrained her compassion before coming here. Matters of the martial world should be settled by the rules of the martial world. Although Long Fei was cruel, the people of Liberty City loved this kind of cruelty the most. They immediately agreed. Third Elder Qi laughed. Since when did Madame Lengyu become a coward? The hypocritical people of the martial world all stood on Long Fei's side. If we don't destroy this kind of scum of the martial world, they will definitely rise from the ashes one day. His Highness Duke of Qin is wise. Today, we will destroy the City of Daughters as an example to the rest. It will also intimidate the heretical sects and gangs. The people of Liberty City were dissatisfied. Fortunately, Third Elder Qi was able to suppress them. Otherwise, they would have become a joke if chaos broke out even before fighting. After being warned, Madame Langyu could no longer suppress her anger. Long Fei, don't be too arrogant. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Around her, the leaders of the 6 or 7 assassin families said in unison, City Lord, we swear to defend the city with our lives. No one will be allowed to take a single step into our city. Madame Langyu was about to lead her men down the city gate, but Ling Shuangshuang pulled her back and whispered, Mother, don't fall for their provocation. They are bullying the weak. They have come prepared. Perhaps it was because Ling Shuangshuang wasn't angry in front of His Highness Duke of Qin that she was able to remain rational. The City of Daughters was not weak. Even though they had lost half of their experts in the battle at Lost Void Lake, the City of Daughters was still not weak. However, Long Fei had brought Liberty City and a batch of experts with him. They were much stronger than the City of Daughters. This was a fact that couldn't be ignored. Mother, now is not the time to be impulsive. We have to be smart. Ling Bingling said in a low voice. Madame Langyu finally calmed down. Although she didn't want to, she had to face reality. She only had one choice, one-on-one. This was all because of her. If she had rejected by Yanqing, she would not have brought this disaster to the City of Daughters. As the City Lord, she had to bear the consequences. She had fought against Long Fei at Lost Void Lake. However, it couldn't be considered a true duel because Duan Muyao and Han Yunxi had also participated in the duel. In the end, her dual swords had actually been broken by Han Yunxi. Compared to Long Fei, Madame Langyu resented Han Yunxi even more. In a duel, if her dual swords were broken again, she had no chance of winning against Long Fei. What should she do? How could she be smart? Madame Langyu hesitated. Long Fei's patience was limited. He didn't ask any questions and directly drew his sword. Seeing this, the 3 groups of experts around them all drew their weapons. In an instant, the atmosphere was tense. Madame Langyu was anxious. She shouted, Long Fei, let's have a duel. What do you think? Long Fei sneered. This prince has already said that this prince is here for revenge, not a duel. What's there to talk about? If you die, the City of Daughters will belong to this prince, and this prince will have his revenge. Madame Langyu was the city lord and the patriarch of the Ling clan. If she could swallow this, even the people of the City of Daughters would look down on her, let alone outsiders. There was no winning or losing in an assassin, only life and death. Without hesitation, she drew her dual swords and flew down the city gates. She said coldly, Fine. Long Fei, today, either you or this madam will die. Get into the carriage and wait for your reward, Long Fei said softly to Han Yunxi and let go of her hand. Reward? City of Daughters. Han Yunxi's heart couldn't help but pound. She really didn't dare to believe it. In terms of martial arts, she was trash who didn't know any martial arts. Long Fei actually wanted to reward her with the City of Daughters. Wasn't this too heaven-defying? She hurriedly took out the magnetic stone. Madame Langyu's hands trembled when she saw this. However, Long Fei didn't accept it. He said, no need. Seeing the arrogance in his eyes, Han Yunxi became even more nervous and agitated. She said, okay, I'll wait for my reward. She put the magnetic stone back into her medical pouch and obediently returned to the carriage. The Shadow Guard team immediately came over to protect the carriage. Madame Lang Yu was glad that Long Fei Yi didn't accept the magnetic stone. She also admired Long Fei Yi. He was truly a character. Of course, she also became confident. As long as the dual swords weren't broken, she wasn't afraid of Long Fei Yi. No matter how strong Long Fei Yi was, he was still a junior. Whether it was his internal energy or combat experience, he was far inferior to her, an experienced assassin. Seeing that Long Fei Yi was really going to duel Madame Lang Yu, the surrounding people became uneasy. Old Third Chi couldn't help but shout, "Duke of Qin, this isn't a place to flaunt your power." That's right. Did Your Highness Duke of Qin hire the experts of Carefree City to watch the battle? What do you mean? Your Highness Duke of Qin, there's no reason for a duel. Everyone is here today. We can't go back empty-handed. Their words sounded dissatisfied, but they were all reminding Long Fei Yi that he couldn't win. Qi Yaotian had once persuaded the city lord of Carefree City to add Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi to his bounty list. He had personally experienced Long Fei Yi's skills, but he didn't believe Long Fei Yi could defeat Madame Lang Yu. Everyone in the Jianghu knew of the top 5 experts. They were, in order of martial arts, Kenzo Sect Master Li Kenshin, Celestial Mountain Head Elder Tsang Qiuzi, Tang Clan Master Tang Zijin, Carefree City Lord Qi Zonglin, and City Lord Madame Lang Yu of the City of Daughters. Among the younger generation, Long Fei was an outstanding talent, but among the older generation, he wasn't ranked at all. Your Highness Duke of Qin, we're all here for revenge. Why talk about a duel? Let's attack together. That's right. Ling Yu killed so many of our fellow Wulin members. Today, we can definitely kill her if we work together. The Wulin members all stepped forward. Han Yunxi didn't like the City of Daughters, but she despised these people even more. They were clearly trying to gang up on Lang Yu. The people of Carefree City, on the other hand, were much more decent. Although they were dissatisfied, they didn't make a move. Long Fei Yi blocked the path of the Wulin members with his sword. If anyone dares to move, don't blame this prince's sword for being merciless. Long Fei wasn't joking. As soon as he finished speaking, he viciously slashed down with his sword, causing the sword on to erupt and leave a deep gash in the ground. Startled, the Jianghu members all backed away. Madame Lang Yu and the people of Carefree City were stunned. They didn't expect Long Fei Yi's internal energy to be so profound. Only now did they realize that they'd underestimated Long Fei Yi, especially Madame Lang Yu, who'd fought Long Fei Yi not long ago. She realized that Long Fei Yi had only teamed up with Han Yunxi at the Battle of Lost Void Lake. Just how strong was this young man? Madame Lang Yu no longer dared to face her love rival. She held her sword with both hands and separated the two swords. Long Fei Yi slowly moved his sword and pointed it at her. For a moment, the entire place was silent. Han Yunxi sat in the carriage and watched nervously. Suddenly, Long Fei Yi and Madame Lang Yu attacked each other with their swords at the same time. With a loud clang, the two swords collided. Intense sword light erupted from the two swords at the same time. However, Long Fei Yi's sword light was clearly stronger than Madame Lang Yu's. Very soon, Long Fei Yi's sword suppressed Madame Lang Yu. Madame Lang Yu was forced to face him with both hands. However, the other sword of the two swords was right behind Long Fei Yi. It was aimed at Long Fei Yi's back. Long Fei Yi had no choice but to dodge. Once he dodged, Madame Lang Yu would seize the opportunity to counterattack. As long as Madame Lang Yu was fast enough, Long Fei Yi would definitely be in danger. In a battle between experts, victory or defeat was determined by a few moves. Seeing that the sword was about to pierce his back, everyone's attention was focused on him. They were so nervous that they forgot to breathe. But at this critical moment, a powerful burst of true chi erupted from Long Fei's back and sent the sword flying out of its path. Oh my god! He was suppressing Madame Lang Yu without exhausting his internal energy. He was still able to release such a terrifying amount of vital energy. Seeing this, everyone present was shocked and trembled. How much had this man's internal energy improved over the years? It was too unexpected. In a battle between experts, the moves were secondary. Internal energy was the key. With the internal energy that Long Fei had displayed today, he could undoubtedly be ranked among the seniors. Had he defeated Madame Lang Yu? Madame Lang Yu held on for dear life. She could no longer summon the other half of the two swords. She was completely restrained and couldn't use any tricks. She could only hold on and compete with Long Fei in terms of internal energy. Although she was shocked by Long Fei's internal energy, she still didn't believe that Long Fei's internal energy would be able to overpower her. Unexpectedly, Long Fei suddenly closed in on her again, suppressing her so much that she began to lean back. There were only two swords between them. Long Fei's sword was pressing against her sword, and her sword was already touching her body. If Long Fei continued to exert force, she would die under her own sword. Madame Lang Yu's entire back was drenched in sweat, her face dripping with perspiration. She was already using all her internal energy to resist, but Long Fei's face was as cold as ice. His breathing was steady, and anyone could tell that he hadn't used all his strength yet. Everyone gaped at the sight. Long Fei lowered his voice. Lang Yu, your lordship will give you one last chance. Tell your lordship who hired you to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. Madame Lang Yu was alarmed. She never expected that Long Fei would still suspect Bai Yanqing's meticulous plans. Are you going to speak or not? Long Fei asked again. I'm not. Madame Lang Yu would never betray Bai Yanqing. Long Fei laughed coldly. So you really do have a master behind the scenes. Madame Lang Yu realized she'd fallen into a trap. Long Fei not only suspected the truth about Lost Void Lake, but her as well. No. She'd rather die than fall into Long Fei's hands. Her life was given to her by Bai Yanqing. No matter what, she'd never betray him. Madame Lang Yu was no match for Long Fei. Stealing her heart, she gave up all resistance and prepared to kill herself with her sword. But Chapter 706. Lady Lang Yu wanted to kill herself, but Long Fei didn't give her the chance. Even though Lady Lang Yu's blade was the closest to her, Long Fei's was still faster. He slit her throat in front of everyone. Lady Lang Yu couldn't believe it. She never expected to lose her last shred of dignity. Even more unexpected was the fact that Bai Yanqing really didn't come to save her. She slumped to the ground, her eyes wide open. She always thought she was the calmest person in the City of Daughters. Perhaps this was the first time she was truly calm. She regretted bringing such a disaster to the City of Daughters. After letting Lady Lang Yu fall to the ground, Long Fei turned to face the crowd and Long Yu. This is the fate of those who dared to barge into my Duke of Qin's estate. In an instant, the crowd fell silent. Who could believe what they'd just seen? Long Fei had killed Lady Lang Yu within 3 moves. Lady Lang Yu had only used her sword once from start to finish. Almost everyone thought that today's battle would be a chaotic battle that would last for several days. But this was the result. Lady Lang Yu, a city lord and the Iron Lady of the assassination world, had died to a junior sword in less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea. How could anyone accept this? Even outsiders couldn't believe it, to say nothing of the City of Daughters residents. They refused to believe that Lady Ling Yu had died just like that, much less that Long Fei Yi had such powerful internal energy. They were all asking themselves the same question. When did Long Fei Yi become so strong? That's right. When did Long Fei Yi become so strong? Everyone paid attention to his achievements in the political arena. Almost no one paid attention to his martial arts over the years. Many people had even forgotten his identity as Tian Shan Kenzo's closed-door disciple. But he was just this strong. Given Long Fei Yi's true strength, where should he rank on the list of experts? Would Carefree City's Qi Zonglin, Tang Clan's Tang Zijin, or even Celestial Mountain's Zhang Qiuzi be his match? The entire place was silent for a very long time. No one dared to move. Long Fei Yi didn't care about the surroundings, whether it was movement or silence. He raised his sword and pointed at the gate of the City of Daughters, saying coldly, "People in the city, listen up. Those who surrender to this prince's sword, stay. Those who refuse to submit will die." At this moment, the stunned assassins on the city gate all came back to their senses and were in an uproar. The few sisters of the Leng clan immediately started wailing. Ling Bingling took the lead, and Ling Shuang and the other sisters immediately followed. They all flew down the city gate to avenge their mother. "Long Fei Yi, I'll kill you. Long Fei Yi, how dare you kill my mother? I'll kill you. Long Fei Yi, City of Daughters will not let you off." Long Fei Yi only used one move to subdue the leader, Ling Bingling. With his sword on her neck, the others saw this and did not dare to move. No matter how agitated he would still be rational in the face of reality. No matter how sorrowful they would always remain calm in the face of death. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. The winner lived, and the loser died. This was the fate of assassins. They had lost, so they all lowered their heads without any complaints. "Men, take them all away." Under Long Fei Yi's command, a few Shadow Guard experts came forward and took the Ling sisters away. Who knew that at this moment, Ling Shuang suddenly shouted, "Long Fei Yi, I have something to say to you." What happened to her? What did she want to say? In an instant, everyone looked over. Long Fei Yi also looked over. Ling Shuang smiled. Only at this point, when she called his name, would he look at her directly. "Long Fei Yi, I only hope that I won't meet you again in my next life." After she finished speaking, she pressed the sword against her neck and collapsed to the ground, disappearing like a jade. The hatred of killing her mother was eternal. Loving him was also eternal. She only hoped that they would not meet again in the next life. Only then could she avoid the bitterness of not being able to obtain this love. "Fourth sister!" Ling Bingling shouted. She wanted to throw herself at her, but the Shadow Guard held her back. The other sisters were much more cold-blooded and emotionless. All of them kept their heads bowed, unmoved. They knew that their fates would be the same. It was only a matter of time. Just who had hired their mother to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi? They still didn't know. Long Fei Yi had taken them away for the sake of clarifying the matter. Since they couldn't give Long Fei Yi an answer, they could only die. Many of the people around them began to sigh. Only now did they realize Ling Shuang's feelings for Long Fei Yi. Unfortunately, Long Fei Yi didn't spare her another glance. His head was still raised towards the city gates. "Long Fei Yi, ah, Long Fei Yi. Do you know that there are many women in this world who love you very, very much?" Han Yunxi stared at Long Fei Yi's proud back from the carriage. She couldn't believe that such a cold man was actually her husband. Abruptly, Long Fei Yi asked loudly, "What about you two?" At his words, two old women flew down the gates at the same time. They fell to one knee as soon as they touched the ground. The Liu family of the City of Daughters is willing to serve your Highness Duke of Qin. The Jiang family of the City of Daughters is willing to serve your Highness Duke of Qin. Good. Long Fei Yi said loudly. Now the clan heads standing on top of the city gates exchanged glances. But soon enough, they all descended the gates and personally opened them to kneel before Long Fei in a single line of surrender. A wise man submits to circumstances. Moreover, the most ruthless and cool-headed of them all was an assassin. In terms of individual combat, they couldn't beat Long Fei Yi. In terms of group combat, the City of Daughters was in danger of being massacred. Surrendering was the best choice they could make. Of course, there were also those who didn't want to surrender, but they didn't dare to fight Long Fei Yi one-on-one. They had already snuck out of the City of Daughters the moment Madame Lang Yu collapsed. The city gates were already open. Most people had chosen to surrender. Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed with satisfaction, then he turned and walked towards Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi watched him quietly. They weren't far apart, but she felt as if he was walking towards her from the other side of fate. Step by step, he seemed to be walking through two different worlds. Finally, he reached her. He took the reins and smiled. Let's go. I'll take you to see this prince's reward. Han Yunxi smiled. Her heart was overflowing with indescribable emotions. Such a large and earth-shattering gift. How could she remain calm the next time he mentioned a reward? Under everyone's watchful eyes, Han Yunxi sat in the carriage. Long Fei Yi personally held the reins and led her to the City of Daughters, the city he had bestowed upon her. Han Yunxi loved this feeling. She felt as if she wanted to travel the world with him until the end of time. Unfortunately, someone soon interrupted them. We've avenged His Highness Duke of Qin. It's time for us to take revenge. Brothers, let's enter the city as well. Lang Yu's death isn't enough to pay for her life. The City of Daughters Wang clan still owes us 3 lives. Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. Brothers, our chance for revenge has come. Let's go. The group of martial artists brandished their weapons and strode towards the city gate. There were at least 10 assassin clans in the City of Daughters. Without the protection of the Lang clan, these assassin clans might not be able to defeat the group of martial artists. In an instant, the clan heads who had surrendered all stood up and blocked the city gates. What kind of hero are you to take advantage of someone's perilous state? Someone cursed. What kind of hero are you talking to assassins about? Shouldn't we be talking about a life for a life? Someone asked with a chuckle. You call yourselves righteous. Hypocrites. Someone cursed again. The Jianghu people roared with laughter. Are you saying that we're righteous if we don't pay with our lives? If you have the ability to take money, then you have to have the ability to spend it. Righteous. Very well, this daddy will destroy the City of Daughters today and enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Han Yunxi's good mood was completely ruined. The more she looked at these so-called righteous people, the more disgusted she felt. If Madame Lang Yu hadn't died, would they have dared to be so arrogant? Han Yunxi was about to speak when Long Fei Yi suddenly threw the sword in his hand. It pierced the ground between the Jianghu people and the clan heads. In an instant, all the chatter stopped abruptly. The clan heads of the City of Daughters all looked at Long Fei Yi. They seemed to want to say something, but they didn't. The group of Jianghu people also turned their heads. If Your Highness Duke of Qin is willing to continue speaking on our behalf, then it will be a great fortune for the Jianghu. The City of Daughters has committed all kinds of evil and killed countless people over the years. It's all thanks to Your Highness Duke of Qin that we were able to destroy the Lang clan today. Your Highness Duke of Qin, you must continue to uphold justice for us. After witnessing Long Fei Ye's strength, they became even more respectful and fawning. Long Fei Ye's cold eyes swept over the group of people. He was about to speak when Han Yunxi stood up and asked coldly, His Highness Duke of Qin just said that Leng Yu is dead and the City of Daughters belongs to His Highness Duke of Qin. You don't understand. At these words, the Jianghu people looked at each other in dismay. Someone tactless asked, Qin Wangfei, what do you mean by this? His Highness Duke of Qin said that the City of Daughters belongs to this Wangfei. From today onwards, the City of Daughters belongs to Qin Wangfei. Anyone who wants to touch a person, a blade of grass, or a tree in the city will have to ask this Wangfei's permission first. This, Qin Wangfei, Your Highness Duke of Qin, you, then our grudge. The Jianghu people were shocked, and so were the surrendered soldiers of the City of Daughters. They had thought that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi would use this opportunity to curry favor with the so-called righteous factions of the Jianghu and hand over the City of Daughters clans for them to deal with. They hadn't expected that Han Yunxi would be so domineering as to protect them. At this time, an old man from the Jianghu stepped forward and said angrily, Your Highness Duke of Qin, why, you have to give us an explanation. Qin Wangfei has already made it very clear. From today onwards, anyone who makes the City of Daughters their enemy is this prince's enemy. Long Fei Yi said coldly, Everyone, do you want to enter the city or leave? It's up to you. Duke of Qin, we can give the City of Daughters to you, but we owe you several answers. Today, we must settle them, otherwise. Before the old man could finish speaking, Long Fei Yi suddenly reached out and grabbed the sword stuck in the ground. Holding it in his hand, he said, Otherwise, what? The old man immediately sucked in a breath of cold air and was secretly shocked. What a powerful internal energy. Otherwise, what? What could the old man do to Long Fei Yi? He could only angrily flick his sleeves and leave. If he stayed any longer, was he going to let Long Fei Yi chase him out? Seeing this, everyone was also indignant, but no one dared to say anything. They could only follow the old man and leave. The people of Carefree City didn't say anything from beginning to end. They were much smarter than the Jianghu people. The Jianghu was, in essence, a place where martial arts spoke. In front of Long Fei Yi, they had nothing to say. Your Highness Duke of Qin, Carefree City didn't do anything. Will you still refund your commission? Third Elder Qi asked jokingly. Chapter 707. Third Brother Qi's joke was to send a message to Long Fei Yi that Liberty City knew how to adapt to the situation. Go back and ask your city lord on my behalf whether this deal is worth it or not. Long Fei Yi said. All right, I will definitely pass on your message. Third Brother Qi bowed politely and left with the others. Although many people in the group were dissatisfied, they could only obey Third Brother Qi's orders. Once they left, Qi Yaotian was the first to speak. Third Uncle, are we going to let Long Fei Yi off so easily? His martial arts are so impressive. If he obtains the City of Daughters power, won't he be able to suppress Liberty City in the future? The reason why Liberty City was hired by Long Fei Yi was to take the opportunity to destroy the City of Daughters. But now, it was only the Leng clan that was destroyed. The City of Daughters power was still there. Now, not only was the City of Daughters not destroyed, but it had also fallen into the hands of a big shot like Long Fei Yi. It was equivalent to Liberty City no longer facing the City of Daughters, but Long Fei Yi instead. Whether this deal was worth it or not, Liberty City had really suffered a huge loss. Can you fight with him? Third Brother Qi asked. Qi Yaoqian's lips twitched. He had nothing to say. If you can't beat him, you have to admit defeat. Third Brother Qi said as he stroked his beard with a solemn expression. Seeing this, the others did not dare to make a sound. Although Third Brother Qi seemed to admit defeat, he had been filled with a sense of crisis since a long time ago. He still felt like he was in a dream. He felt that the battle between Long Fei Yi and Madame Lang Yu was just a dream, an unbelievable dream. Although Madame Lang Yu was ranked behind the City Lord of Liberty City, their strength was actually not much different. However, the strength that Long Fei Yi displayed today was clearly much higher than Madame Lang Yu's. Third brother Qi could not help but wonder what would have happened if the City Lord of Liberty City had been the one fighting with Long Fei Yi instead of Madame Lang Yu. Long Fei Yi was capable of swallowing the City of Daughters as well as Liberty City. They had to be wary of him. Although Qi Yaotian had nothing to say, he secretly thought that he must discuss this matter with his father when he returned and find out the Achilles heel of Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Thinking back to when Han Yunxi killed his giant poisonous bat and extorted a large sum of money from him, he still remembered this debt to this day. The people of Liberty City left, too. Long Fei Yi and his companions were the only ones left at the gate of the city. Han Yunxi was still sitting in the carriage. Long Fei Yi held the sword in one hand and the horse in the other. He was like Han Yunxi's most loyal guard, pulling her step by step into the city gate. The patriarchs who were originally blocking the gate hurriedly stepped aside. They stared at the slowly moving carriage. Their gazes were filled with reverence for Long Fei Yi and admiration for Han Yunxi. Compared to those who claimed to be righteous, this couple was truly righteous. Their bearing was unparalleled. Compared to the Lang family, they were more willing to pledge their loyalty to King Qin and Qin Wangfei. After entering the city, Long Fei Yi personally drove the carriage and brought Han Yunxi to the Lang family's mansion. This was the center of the City of Daughters. The Ling family had either died or fled. No one surrendered. The gate was filled with people from various factions in the City of Daughters. Some were patriarchs, and some were lone assassins. Since they did not leave, it meant that they were willing to pledge their loyalty. Long Fei Yi held Han Yunxi's hand and got off the carriage. He did not pay any attention to the people who were waiting for them. He asked Han Yunxi seriously, "What do you think of this mansion?" "It's someone else's old mansion. I don't like it." Han Yunxi was actually a clean freak. Whether it was people or things, she did not like second-hand goods. "All right." Long Fei Yi immediately ordered the shadow guard beside him. "Men, tear it down and rebuild it." Before the shadow guard could reply, the people around them scrambled to express their willingness to help. "Forget it. Isn't it a waste of talent to let all of you build a house?" Han Yunxi said with a smile. Everyone immediately expressed that it was their honor to be able to serve Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi's lips curled into a cold smile. Her eyes were cold as she sized up everyone present. Gradually, everyone shut their mouths and did not dare to say anything. Everyone present was either the head of a family or a rather famous assassin. They were all people who had experienced great storms and waves, but they could not figure out Han Yunxi's thoughts. Long Fei Yi did not say anything. He looked at Han Yunxi's cold and stern expression and was very satisfied. This woman was becoming more and more like a leader. Finally, Han Yunxi opened her mouth cold and said, "What? Even the Iron Ladies are proficient in the art of flattery." This princess thought that in the assassin business, they would only use their strength to speak. Hearing this, everyone revealed awkward expressions. Han Yunxi was mocking them for not having strength and only knowing how to flatter. They were indeed flattering her because they were afraid. They didn't know how this woman would rule the City of Daughters when His Highness Duke of Qin gave the entire City of Daughters to this woman. They also didn't know which family this woman would choose to support and which assassin to support. Therefore, they could only try to curry favor with her first. There's no need for such empty words with this Wang Fei. This Wang Fei will like whoever shows me their strength. In the silence, Han Yunxi walked up the steps step by step. She stood in front of the tall gates of the Lang estate and said coldly, from today onwards, the City of Daughters will stop all assassins. This Wang Fei will reorganize the City of Daughters in the form of mercenaries. This Wang Fei will raise you and teach you the art of poison. You will only serve this Wang Fei. Those who are not interested can leave now. Those who are interested can stay. When they heard the words mercenaries, everyone present became excited and hot-blooded. When they heard the words art of poison, they became even more excited. They exchanged looks with each other, pleasantly surprised. Unexpectedly, no one left. In reality, they wanted to be loyal to His Highness Duke of Qin. They more or less looked down on this woman who only knew how to use poison and not martial arts. They didn't expect this woman to bring up the word mercenaries. The City of Daughters and Carefree City were both assassins. For a long time, there was little porridge but more monks. Employers became more and more picky, and their commissions became lower and lower. Whether it was the Leng family or the Qi family, they had both established mercenary teams and cultivated professional mercenary legions in search of a new way out. For assassins, there was only one path: kill for money. For mercenaries, there were many paths. They could accept all kinds of difficult missions and challenges, such as participating in a coup, acting as the vanguard, collecting intelligence, rescuing hostages, defending the city, and so on. Unfortunately, other than killing people, no one would trust them in other aspects. Because the two cities' mercenary teams didn't receive any orders, they could only disperse. Who would have thought that Han Yunxi would also think of the path of mercenaries? She was the mistress of the Duke of Qin's estate, the mistress of the Commander-in-Chief's estate in the south. If she reorganized the City of Daughters into a mercenary group, would they still have to worry about not having any missions? This was simply too good. For a moment, everyone bowed, expressing their willingness to serve Qin Wang Fei. This time, it wasn't flattery, but sincere. You can all go back. In the afternoon, the details of the recruitment will be announced. You can sign up individually or come as a group from your family. This Wang Fei will wait for you. Han Yunxi said seriously. Everyone was overjoyed and retreated to prepare. The City of Daughters had clearly been occupied, but other than the remnants of the Leng clan who had fled, no one in the city felt grief or hatred. It was as if the entire city had been reborn and was filled with new vitality. After everyone dispersed, the Shadow Guard were left dumbfounded. They had always known that esteemed Wang Fei was different from the rest and that her poison skills were extraordinary, but they never thought that esteemed Wang Fei, a woman who didn't know martial arts, would be able to come up with terms like mercenaries and soldiers. It was simply too surprising. If it was said that His Highness Duke of Qin had taken over the City of Daughters with martial arts, then esteemed Wang Fei had used her wisdom to conquer the hearts of all the assassins in the city. Su Donglin stood to the side. He was the leader of the Poison Shadow Guard that Han Yunxi had personally raised. Currently, the Poison Shadow Guard only had a trifling dozen people, but he had a premonition that in the near future, esteemed Wang Fei would have a force strong enough to contend with His Highness Duke of Qin's Shadow Guard. Esteemed Wang Fei, which soldiers are you planning to form? Su Donglin couldn't help but be curious. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi took out a notebook from her medical pouch, tore out a page, and tossed it to Su Donglin. It's written clearly here. Sort it out and announce it. Su Donglin found it even more inconceivable. Esteemed Wang Fei had come prepared. In reality, Han Yunxi hadn't come prepared. She had always been preparing to form a mercenary regiment. In the modern era, she had been sent to the jungles of Africa and the rainforests of South America to participate in battlefield medical work. She had to treat mercenaries who had accidentally been poisoned during field operations. Thus, she had some understanding of such matters. Cloud Realm Continent just happened to lack such an organization. Long Fei Yi had taken over the City of Daughters, so she could make good use of all the assassins there. She wanted to form a few mercenary squads with a clear division of labor, such as gathering intelligence, rescuing hostages, fighting in the vanguard, and so on. These people all had strong foundations in martial arts. As long as they improved their professional knowledge, they would be able to carry out missions in less than 3 months. As soon as Su Donglin received the notebook, Long Feiyi snatched it away. He glanced at it before returning it to Su Donglin. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the shadow guard. He did not express any opinion and remained calm and collected. However, his hands had long since betrayed him. Once again, he couldn't help but rub Han Yunxi's hair. Every time he did this, his eyes were filled with indulgence. Every time he did this, it meant that he was very satisfied with this woman. He wrapped an arm around Han Yunxi's shoulders and walked towards the Leng estate, smiling. Looks like we'll have to stay a few more days. I've long planned out the mercenary squads. I'll tell Su Donglin the details later and have him make the arrangements. We'll leave tomorrow without delay. Ascending Celestial Mountain is more important. Han Yunxi was very serious. Long Feiyi stopped and looked at her. Han Yunxi, you and your lordship are a perfect match. Han Yunxi gave a start, but quickly broke into a smile. Your Highness Duke of Qin, are you praising Qinxie? Or are you praising yourself? Long Feiyi carefully smoothed out her hair. Han Yunxi, your lordship isn't joking. He probably wouldn't be able to find another woman in this lifetime who could replace Han Yunxi. A perfect match meant that she was pleasing to the eye and pleasing to the heart. After he finished smoothing out her hair, Han Yunxi's clear eyes seemed even brighter. She said, since we're a perfect match, then we should be a perfect match. Long Feiyi, you have to love me well. Long Feiyi didn't say anything. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulled her close, and sealed her lips with a kiss. The matter in the City of Daughters had a beautiful and unexpected outcome. Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi stayed in the City of Daughters. The next day, with Long Feiyi's help, Han Yunxi quickly arranged everything in the City of Daughters. The carriage slowly drove out of the City of Daughters West Gate, and they officially set foot on the road to Celestial Mountain. They didn't know that in the forest outside the city, there were 2 pairs of eyes staring at them. Who were they? Chapter 708. After a while, Tang Li regained his composure and smiled at Ning Jing. I wanted to kill that giant python and take its gallbladder to nourish Jing Jing's body, but it seems like I can't do it now. Tang Li was still smiling at her. So, he didn't take the incident of her kicking to heart. Ning Jing looked at him without saying a word. It wasn't clear what she was thinking, but she bit her lip. Tang Li was panting and sweating profusely, but he was smiling devilishly. The tip of his tongue touched the corner of his mouth as he looked at her with interest. To be exact, he was looking at her lips. He rarely saw this woman doing such a thing. Ning Jing quickly noticed the strange look in his eyes. She followed his line of sight and looked down, not understanding what he was looking at. Hey, look, she was about to ask when Tang Li suddenly came closer, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. Ning Jing had been bullied by Tang Li before, and it was under the influence of drugs. However, Ning Jing was stunned by his kiss. She widened her eyes in disbelief and her mind went blank. She couldn't think, but she could clearly feel that this man's lips were burning hot. She wanted to push him away, but she didn't think of that and just stood there in a daze. Actually, Tang Li was shocked too. Although he always took advantage of her verbally, he really didn't have the intention to take advantage of her. He secretly swore to himself that he would never touch this wife. But just now, was there something wrong with his brain? Impulsive my ass. Alright, since he kissed her, let's just treat it as a show and let go. But damn it, he didn't want to let go at all. This woman's lips were so soft. He couldn't control himself and sucked hard. Ning Jing seemed to be frightened and immediately wanted to retreat. Tang Li was anxious. He quickly moved closer and kissed her even harder, as if he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to taste her again if he let go. Ning Jing started to struggle. It would have been better if she did not struggle. Once she struggled, she completely brought out the evil in Tang Li's bones. Since he couldn't let go of this sweet taste, he might as well go all out. Since he had already touched it, he might as well touch it to the end. In any case, this woman was his legal wife. In any case, this woman was the one who set him up first. He had endured this for a long time. Tang Li grabbed Ning Jing's hand with one hand and wrapped his other hand around Ning Jing's neck, trapping her in his arms. Ning Jing wanted to turn her head away, but he simply hugged her head and kissed her deeply. Rather than calling it a kiss, it was more like a demand. It was so intense that Ning Jing had no room to resist. She could only accept it. As they kissed, Tang Li had long forgotten about his dignity and how to settle accounts with her. All that was left in his mind was that Ning Jing was really too beautiful. He had once had her for one night, so it could be said that he was addicted to her. Why didn't he know that Ning Jing would be like a blooming flower, full and sweet? How could he stop now? Ning Jing looked mature, but she was actually very inexperienced. She could not withstand Tang Li's teasing at all. The two of them quickly fell into each other's hands. The two of them were not people who were willing to compromise, and they were not people who could be forced to do something. Yet, they compromised to each other just like that. There must be a reason, but neither of them had realized it yet. After the passion, Tang Li hugged Ning Jing tightly and wrapped his robe tightly around her. Ning Jing was exhausted, but she was still conscious. She was so conscious that she knew what had just happened. This time, Tang Li was also conscious. He remembered her scent clearly. The two of them lay in the grass tiredly. Ning Jing closed her eyes, while Tang Li opened his eyes and looked at the clear sky. He was sweating profusely, and his breathing had not stabilized yet. After a long silence, Ning Jing finally said, "Is that enough?" "What?" Tang Li did not understand. "If it's enough, let me go." "I've paid back what I owe you," Ning Jing said coldly. She had begun to interrogate herself in her heart about her compromise just now. Only then did Tang Li wake up from his drunken dream. He suddenly turned over and pinned Ning Jing under his body again. Jing, your husband's performance did not satisfy you, Tang Li." Ning Jing roared. "Shut up. Oh, I was wrong. Jing, don't get agitated." Tang Li smiled naughtily. "I wanted to say, your husband's performance did not satisfy you." With his ambiguous tone, was there a difference between the words satisfied and satisfied? "Get lost." Ning Jing wanted to push him away, but unfortunately, she really did not have the strength. She wanted to fall asleep immediately. Jing, let your husband hug you for a while. You're very warm." After Tang Li finished speaking, he had already hugged Ning Jing tightly. Ning Jing could not do anything to him, so she buried her head in his shoulder and bit down hard. Tang Li was in pain. It was so painful that the corners of his mouth twitched, but he endured it and let her bite him. He whispered in her ear, Jing, don't worry. Your husband will definitely dote on you, love you, and won't let you suffer any grievances. Put away your flowery words. You've had fun, so you should let me go now, right?" Ning Jing asked coldly. Jing, you don't believe me?" Tang Li asked aggrievedly. "Tang Li, stop acting with me." Ning Jing was very disdainful. In reality, Before they left the Tang sect, Mrs. Tang had made things difficult for her several times, but it was always Tang Li who helped her out. Even if Ning Jing did not remember it in her heart, she at least saw it. From the time she married into the Tang sect until now, she had not suffered any grievances. Jing, I know about what happened between us in the past. I don't care about whether it was right or wrong. I just treat it as fate. What will it take for you to believe me? Tang Li was anxious. A complicated look flashed past Ning Jing's eyes. After hesitating for a moment, she said, "You're the Tang sect's clan master. If you give me all the Tang sect's hidden weapons, I'll believe you." This. Tang Li was in a difficult position, but he was sneering in his heart. Ning Jing finally showed her tail. Liar. Ning Jing took advantage of Tang Li's distraction to push him away. She wrapped his robe tightly around himself, leaving him topless. I'm not a liar. Tang Li grew serious. Although I'm the Tang sect's clan master, the Tang sect's hidden weapons are still in my father's hands. The designs are in the hands of the Council of Elders. Actually, Jing, can't you tell? I'm just a figurehead in name. What do you mean by a marriage alliance with Cloud Realm Trade Consortium? What do you mean you won't treat me unfairly? Ning Jing laughed at herself. Now it looks like I'm the clan master's madam in name only, huh? Hearing this, Tang Li gave a long sigh and fell silent. Ning Jing kicked him in the foot. Say something. You keep saying you won't let me suffer grievances. I'm probably the most aggrieved woman in the history of the Tang clan. Tang Li didn't speak, but Ning Jing gave a soft snort and turned to leave. Tang Li grew serious. If you're still willing to believe me, then come back with me right now. We'll go back to the Tang clan and fight for what belongs to us. Ning Jing didn't answer, but kept walking without looking back. Tang Li chased after her with large strides. Jing, you're my wife. Ning Jing had planned to wait a few more days before giving in, but hearing these words made her turn around and meet Tang Li's sincere eyes. Jing, you're my wife. If you don't believe me, who do you believe? If I don't believe you, who should I believe? My father didn't just abdicate to give me face. The Tang clan's infighting isn't as simple as you think. Why don't you come back with me? Give me a chance to fight for you. Tang Li's face was sincere, but he was laughing inside. Why didn't he realize he was such a good liar? Once he settled Ning Jing, he could probably pick all the famous flowers in the world. Of course, his sister-in-law was out of the question. He'd been waiting for Ning Jing to bring up this topic for a long time. Meanwhile, his father and mother had made ample preparations in the Tang clan as well, ready to play along with him at any time. Ning Jing wanted the Tang clan's weapons, but they had their eyes on her arms trade. Ning Jing's expression was reluctant. Fine, I'll give you one chance. Let's agree that if you can't control the Tang clan's assassination weapons, you'll come back to live with me at Cloud Realm Trade Consortium in a year's time. A year later, her elder brother's ban would be lifted, and she'd have plenty of ways to return to her maternal family. Actually, there was no need for her to bring Tang Li back to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. The marriage was already set in stone, so the consortium could forget about marrying her off to another man. Still, she wanted to bring this noisy bastard back and torture him well. Looking at Tang Li, Ning Jing silently swore in her letter that she would not only control the Tang clan's low-level assassination weapons through Tang Li in a year's time to develop Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's arms trade, but also bring Tang Li back to the consortium. With that, the two of them came to an agreement. Tang Li was delighted as he strode towards Ning Jing. Ning Jing finally gave him a better look and returned his jacket. But Tang Li didn't want it. Wear it. The winds are cold in the mountains. Get on, I'll carry you back. Both horses were gone, and there was still a long way to go to the docks. Ning Jing was truly tired, so she couldn't ask for more. She immediately jumped onto Tang Li's back. Only then did she notice the bite mark on his shoulder. It was bleeding, a mark she'd left for him. Be good and sleep. I'll wake you up when we get to the boat and prepare something good for you to eat. Tang Li's doting tone was enough to make a person drown. Ning Jing didn't reply, but a cold smile hung on her face. She didn't fall asleep the entire time, not because she didn't trust Tang Li, but because she couldn't fall asleep staring at the wound on his shoulder. In the end, she took out a handkerchief and carefully wiped away the blood on Tang Li's shoulder. Tang Li and Ning Jing's battle over the arms trade was about to begin, while Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were on their way to Celestial Mountain. They traveled day and night. Long Fei Yi only did two things along the way: take care of many urgent matters, and explain the internal struggles of Celestial Mountain to Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi only did two things as well: listen to Long Fei Yi talk about Celestial Mountain, and sleep to cultivate. After traveling for more than 10 days, they arrived at the foot of Celestial Mountain on time. Celestial Mountain was the name of a continuous mountain range, and it was also the name of the highest peak in this mountain range. Tian Shan Kenzo was the location of Celestial Mountain. There were a total of 5 mountains in this mountain range. From the south to the north, it was like a staircase. The mountains were next to each other, and each mountain was taller than the previous one. The 5th mountain in the north was Celestial Mountain. Long Fei Ye's horse carriage stopped at the top of the first mountain. Han Yunxi got off the carriage and was shocked by the scenery in front of her. She saw Chapter 7:10. As soon as Han Yunxi got off the carriage, she was stunned by the scenery in front of her. Her impression of Heaven Mountain had always been that it was mysterious. However, at this moment, standing at the top of the first mountain of Heaven Mountain, looking up at the long and towering mountains in the distance, she could not help but feel awe. These 5 mountains were like stairs to heaven, each taller than the last. It was as if stepping on them would lead one to the Nantian Gate of the 9 heavens. Other than the first mountain that Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi were on, the top of the 4 mountains in front of them were all covered in snow. Looking from afar, the white snow and the blue sky contrasted each other, clean and sacred. Han Yunxi looked at the white snow and blue sky from afar. It took a long time for her to recover. Even though the deep mountains were sacred and clean, how dark and dangerous were there in Heaven Mountain? In this world, no matter where you went, it was the same. Beneath the beauty was filth. If you were weak, you would be drowned in the filth. If you were not strong enough, you could only wallow in the filth. Only when you were strong could you have the confidence to emerge from the mud unsullied. Only then could you have the capital to make yourself clean. Han Yunxi looked carefully and realized that the distance between the mountains was very far. If they walked, they would have to climb over 4 mountains to reach the foot of Heaven Mountain. This meant that they would have to go up and down the mountain 4 times before they had the chance to climb the real Heaven Mountain. Not to mention how far the distance between the mountains was and how many days it would take to walk. Not to mention the dangers in the mountains, even the top of the 4 mountains in front of them, which were still covered in snow, might not be able to reach the top. Therefore, to reach the top of Heaven Mountain, it was not feasible to climb the mountain on foot. Even a lightness arts expert like Long Fei wouldn't be able to fly between the 2 mountains. The mountains were dangerous and tall. Even the yellow crane could not pass them, and the monkeys wanted to climb them. To reach Heaven Mountain, one had to take the only path that Heaven Mountain had left for the world. Han Yunxi quickly noticed the bamboo suspension bridge between the first and second mountains. It stretched from the peak of the first mountain to the gorge between the 2 mountains, all the way to the middle of the second. She looked back at Long Fei Yi and asked, "Is this the only path?" This is the fastest way, Long Fei remarked. If they didn't find it tiring, they could circle around the mountain, but it was hard to predict the dangers. Moreover, the mountain paths were difficult to traverse, so it would take at least a month to reach the peak. Let's go and take a look at that bridge. They were still some distance away, so Han Yunxi could only see part of the bridge from a distance. She didn't know the details yet. Long Fei Yi brought her to the other side of the mountain and saw that the entrance to the bamboo bridge was sealed by a row of iron chains. There were 2 white-clothed imperial bodyguards standing on the left and right sides of the bridge. Not far from the bridge, there was a small temple-like palace, which looked like a sentry box. Although Mount Tianshan was difficult to climb, it was still heavily guarded. Han Yunxi walked closer and carefully observed the bamboo bridge. Only then did she realize that this bamboo bridge spanning between 2 mountains was very deceptive. This thing couldn't even be called a bridge. At most, it was a bamboo pipe tied with ropes. The 2 ropes formed an inverted triangle and hung the bamboo pipe together. The handrails on both sides were 2 parallel ropes. That was all. The most important thing was that the bamboo pipe was very thin and could only allow 1 person to step on it with 1 foot. It could not allow 2 people to walk side by side. To cross this bridge, it was equivalent to stepping on the bamboo pipe and holding on to the ropes on both sides to walk over step by step. It looked like there were no safety measures at all. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew and the entire bamboo bridge swayed with the wind. The wind in the canyon was strong and the bamboo bridge was very long. Even if a few people stood on it, the bridge would still sway. Han Yunxi's eyes flickered with a complicated expression as she watched. The imperial bodyguards at the bridge did not seem to recognize Long Fei Yi. When they saw them walking over, they immediately came forward to stop them. Before the imperial bodyguards could speak, Long Fei Yi flashed a white jade token. On the token was a blood-red sect character. When the imperial bodyguards saw the token, their expressions changed drastically. They immediately retreated and bowed. Greetings, Senior Brother Yi. Long Fei Yi had not been to Tianshan Mountain for many years. The new imperial bodyguards did not recognize him, but they definitely recognized the white jade token. There were many things about the jade tokens on Tianshan Mountain. Different colors represented different levels. Other than the colorless tokens in the hands of Elder Kenzo and the 4 Grand Elders, the white token was the highest level. Only the direct disciples of Elder Kenzo and the 4 Grand Elders could possess it. The characters on the jade tokens represented different factions. The sect character represented Elder Kenzo and was a direct disciple of the sect master. Therefore, Long Fei Ye's white jade token represented that he was a direct disciple of Elder Kenzo. Elder Kenzo only had 2 disciples, Duanmu Yao and Long Fei Yi. Everyone on Tianshan Mountain knew this. Besides the sect character, the white jade token also had the characters for heart, scripture, sword, and precepts. They represented Lockhart Courtyard, Scripture Depository, Sword Depository, and Abstinence Courtyard respectively. These 2 depositories and courtyards were controlled by the 4 Grand Elders of Tianshan Mountain. Among them, Head Elder Tsangchozi was in charge of Lockhart Courtyard, which controlled Tianshan Kenzo's Nirvana Heart Sutra. There were many sets of Tianshan sword skills, but only one Heart Sutra. To learn Tianshan's sword skills, one had to cultivate the Nirvana Heart Sutra. Anyone who cultivated the Nirvana Heart Sutra had to undergo a seal to permanently seal away the unrighteous chi in their bodies. Tsangchozi's Lockhart Courtyard not only controlled the Nirvana Heart Sutra, but also the Lockhart Seal. Besides Tianshan Kenzo's direct disciples, all disciples of Tianshan Mountain had to stay in Lockhart Courtyard for a year or 2 before beginning their studies. Then they could begin cultivating the Nirvana Heart Sutra. Internal cultivation sutras were the foundation of swordsmanship, so Lockhart Courtyard's status on Tian Shan Mountain was self-evident. Unless absolutely necessary, no one wanted to offend Lockhart Courtyard members. The disciples of Tian Shan Mountain all supported Sangchosi, so no one dared to show him any disrespect. Because of Lockhart Courtyard's power and Sangchosi's extraordinary martial arts, Elder Kenzo often ignored sect affairs. Over the past decade or so, Sangchosi's influence had far surpassed that of the other three elders. Sometimes, he could even act as the sect head and make decisions on important matters. The two guards recognized Long Feiyi, but didn't know who Han Yunshi was. When they saw Long Feiyi holding Han Yunshi's hand, they hesitated over how to greet him. At this moment, a figure suddenly flew in from the side of the palace like a gust of wind. Han Yunshi didn't even get a good look before she heard a coquettish voice say, "Senior brother Yi, you're finally back. Xan, missed you so much." This was the second time Han Yunshi had heard a woman call Long Feiyi senior brother after Duan Muyao. Although it had nothing to do with Duan Muyao, Han Yunshi still felt uncomfortable hearing it. She examined the woman before her and saw that this Xan was petite and had a pretty face. Her eyes were especially bright as she looked at Long Feiyi. She wore a white jade pendant at her waist with the character for sword written on it. Without a doubt, she was a disciple of hidden sword depositories of high status. While Han Yunshi studied Xan studied Han Yunshi as well. Finally, her gaze rested on Han Yunshi's interlocked hand with Long Feiyi's. There was one emotion that women couldn't hide, and that was jealousy. Xan was no exception, and the jealousy in her eyes was about to overflow. Long Feiyi didn't even remember who this woman called Xan was and didn't intend to pay any attention to her. Who knew that Xan would laugh and say, "Senior brother Yi, those who don't know martial arts are not allowed to enter Celestial Mountain." Although they spent most of their time in Celestial Mountain, the female disciples of Celestial Mountain would never miss any news about Long Feiyi. Especially when it came to the woman beside him, they would try their best to find out more about her. This Han Yunshi didn't know any martial arts and only knew some unorthodox poison techniques. What right did she have to gain Long Feiyi's favor? God knows what kind of charm she used to seduce Long Feiyi. Being Long Feiyi's woman meant that she was destined to be the enemy of all women in the world. Han Yunshi had been through hundreds of battles and was already used to this kind of hostility. She even started to enjoy it. Learning martial arts is so tiring and boorish. Of all the things a girl could do, why did she have to learn martial arts? She's making herself neither a man nor a woman and can't even get married. Han Yunshi purposely hooked her arm around Long Feiyi's and snuggled up to him. Imitating Xan's coy tone, she continued, "I don't know martial arts. In any case, Long Feiyi, you have to always stay by my side and love me, dote on me, and protect me." As she spoke, she raised a finger and lazily looked at it. Unhurriedly, she continued, "Protect me and don't let anyone harm a single finger of mine." Bickering with Han Yunshi would only lead to death by her poisonous tongue. Xan was so angry that smoke almost came out of her nostrils. Just as she was about to retort, Long Feiyi grabbed Han Yunshi's hand and gently bit her finger. How could the aloof and proud Duke of Qin do such a thing to a woman? How could his lips touch a woman? Xan didn't want to believe it, but she couldn't help but like Long Feiyi's action. How she wished that Long Feiyi had bitten her. What would it feel like? What would it feel like? A numbing sensation flowed from Han Yunshi's finger to her entire body like an electric current. Fortunately, he quickly let go of her. Otherwise, she didn't know if she would have collapsed in his arms. "Why aren't you opening the lock?" Long Feiyi questioned the guards. The two guards were also shocked by Long Feiyi's bite. Only now did they regain their senses and hurriedly opened the iron chains to let Long Fei-yi and Han Yunxi onto the bamboo bridge. Long Fei-yi had the coachman, Uncle Gao, wait in the palace and only brought Su Donglin up the mountain. It wasn't that he was underestimating the enemy, but that he had his own forces on Tianshan. Su Donglin used the bridge as a stepping stone to soar into the air. He used his qinggong to open up a path for them. Only now did Han Yunxi realize that the bamboo bridge wasn't for walking. It was only for stepping. It seemed that Axayan's mockery about her not knowing martial arts made sense. However, she had Long Fei-yi with her, so she wasn't afraid. Hold on tight. Long Fei-yi was in a good mood. He told Han Yunxi to hold on tight to him, but in fact, he hugged her first. With a tap of his foot, he soared into the air. His figure was handsome and carefree. Even after he left, Axayan was still dumbfounded. Of course, Axayan was just a small peach blossom. There was a bigger peach blossom waiting for Han Yunxi. As soon as Long Fei-yi and the others arrived at the foot of the mountain, all the important figures on the mountain peak knew. Could Han Yunxi successfully cross the bamboo bridge? Chapter 711. The distance between the first and second mountains was the furthest. Even for an expert like Long Fei-yi, he had to use the bridge 5 or 6 times to cross it. However, it had to be said that the scenery here was very good. Long Fei-yi deliberately slowed down to let Han Yunxi take her time to enjoy the scenery. She remembered the first time this guy carried her and flew. Han Yunxi was both scared and surprised, but now, she was already used to it. It wasn't that she was no longer afraid of heights, but she believed that the man carrying her could really protect her. Long Fei-yi, the first time you carried me and flew, I was really scared, said Han Yunxi. What were you scared of? Asked Long Fei-yi. I was scared that you would throw me down if you were unhappy, replied Han Yunxi. Long Fei-yi was stunned at first, but then he laughed out loud. Would this prince? Yes. Han Yunxi was very sure, and then she added, you definitely would back then. Then what about now? Would you? Asked Long Fei-yi again. Definitely not. Han Yunxi was still very sure. Long Fei-yi nodded and didn't say much. After a long time, he suddenly said, Han Yunxi, actually you wouldn't have back then either. Definitely not. Han Yunxi didn't agree. She still remembered how cold, indifferent, and ruthless he was back then. It seemed like he would get annoyed if she said anything more, and he would just ignore her every time. Han Yunxi was about to argue, but Long Fei-yi asked, do you know why you wouldn't have? I don't know. Han Yunxi waited for him to say the reason and then refuted. Unexpectedly, Long Fei-yi smiled and sighed faintly. This prince also doesn't know why, but in any case, I didn't abandon you. Because he liked her long ago. Long Fei-yi, when did you start to like me? Was it earlier than me? Yes, why? Han Yunxi sighed softly and unconsciously hugged him tightly. At this time, Su Donglin, who was leading the way, suddenly turned back. Master, there's someone blocking the way. It's a woman. Su Donglin was indeed Han Yunxi's shadow guard. His words were obviously meant for Han Yunxi. It's already April. Why are there still so many peach blossoms? Han Yunxi sighed. The meaning behind her words was clear, but it was a pity that Su Donglin did not understand. He honestly said, Princess Consort, the temperature of the Heaven Mountain is lower than the bottom of the mountain, so the peach blossoms bloom later. Right now is the time when the peach blossoms are blooming. Is that so? How vigorous is it? Han Yunxi asked lazily. It's all over the mountain. You'll be able to see it when you get to the front. The entire mountainside is filled with flowers, like a sea of flowers. It's very beautiful. Su Donglin replied excitedly. Han Yunxi was very satisfied. She smiled and did not say anything else. Su Donglin was about to speak when he suddenly met Long Fei Ye's icy gaze. Although he did not understand where he went wrong, he knew that he must have said something wrong. He trembled a few times and hurriedly retreated to the side, not daring to speak again. Long Fei Yi carried Han Yunxi and continued forward after using the bamboo bridge as leverage. He did not take Su Donglin's report to heart. Actually, there was another reason why he did not like to come to Heaven Mountain. The female disciples were too annoying. Not long after, he saw a woman standing in the air in front of him. She was dressed in a light yellow long dress. The hem of her dress was 3 feet long and flowed down. She held a light muslin shawl in her hand, looking elegant and light. Her hair was combed into a bun that was decorated with light yellow pearls. She was beautiful and noble. She stood in the air, her long dress fluttering in the wind. Her ink-black hair fluttered in the wind. She was like a fairy who had descended into the mortal world. Everything about her was beautiful, and she was perfectly matched. However, her face was very ugly. Some people had average looks but could make up for it with makeup and clothes. However, some people were destined to be unable to cover up their lack of looks no matter how they dressed up. Han Yunxi only felt that it was a pity for the long dress. "Who's this peach blossom?" she asked softly. Long Fei Yi clearly did not take the newcomer seriously. He carried Han Yunxi and continued flying forward. Zhang Qiuying. Han Yunxi only felt that the name was very familiar but could not recall it. However, she was too lazy to ask. Why would she need to know these unimportant names? Zhang Qiuying was indifferent to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi approaching. However, when Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi passed by her, she said cold, "Long Fei Yi, if someone without martial arts wants to go to Heaven Mountain, they have to cross this bridge step by step. Have you forgotten?" Long Fei Yi did not answer and continued forward. Zhang Qiuying suddenly drew her sword and several sword-wielding women flew out from the abyss under the bridge. They lined up to block Long Fei Yi's path. "Get lost," Long Fei Yi said. "What if I say no?" Zhang Qiuying asked back. Long Fei Yi was about to make a move when a powerful sword chief suddenly rushed over. Then, an old woman over 50 years old flew over with a sword. Han Yunxi noticed the jade pendant on her waist. It was a transparent jade token. Besides Elder Kenzo, only the 4 great elders had transparent jade tokens. Among the 4 great elders, only the 4th elder, Granny Yu, who was in charge of the abstinence courtyard, was a woman. Zhang Qiuying was overjoyed when she saw Granny Yu. "Aunt Yu, senior brother Yi has violated the sect rules. Do you want me to call my father?" Zhang Qiuying seemed to be making things difficult for Long Fei Yi, but she was actually looking for trouble with Han Yunxi. If she could force Long Fei to abide by the sect's rules, then Han Yunxi would have to cross the bamboo bridge step by step to reach Celestial Mountain. Not to mention a woman, even a man who did not know martial arts would find it impossible to cross this bridge. Those who didn't fall would be scared to death. The abstinence courtyard doesn't have jurisdiction over the sect rules. "Why do you need your father?" Granny Yu asked coldly. Her expression was cold and solemn and her words were methodical, exuding a majesty that could not be disobeyed. She was a neutral party in the conflict between the factions on Tian Shan Mountain. She was not biased towards anyone. Someone had reported Long Fei Yi for violating the sect rules, so she naturally had to come in person. "Aunt Yu is right. Qiuying was too rash." Zhang Qiuying retreated to the side. In fact, the person who had reported Long Fei Yi to the abstinence courtyard was none other than her subordinates. Sun Qiuying controlled many industries on Sky Mountain. Coupled with her identity as the first elder's daughter, she was considered an all-powerful figure among the younger generation. She had not dared to go out in the past 2 years because of the embarrassment of her marriage. If she hadn't learned that Long Feiyi had brought Han Yunxi up the mountain, she wouldn't have come out so easily today. Although she had obediently followed her father's orders to get engaged to Tang Li, she still loved him. In the end, the one she truly loved was Long Feiyi. She knew that her father and Long Feiyi were destined to be irreconcilable enemies one day, so she could only hide her feelings in her heart. She accepted that she would never be able to have Long Feiyi in this lifetime. But she couldn't just stand by and watch Long Feiyi bring another woman up Sky Mountain. Sky Mountain was her Tsang clan's territory. She would never let Han Yunxi have it easy. Granny Yu looked at Han Yunxi with disdain. She hated useless women like her the most. Aside from causing trouble for men, they didn't know how to do anything else. What was she doing here if she didn't know martial arts? Of course, she had no right to meddle in Long Feiyi's private affairs. His master should be in charge of such matters, while she only cared about the sect rules. Coldly, she said, "Fei, we're not even halfway across the bridge yet. Take her back and walk step by step across the bridge. This old woman will pretend nothing happened. But if you insist on going forward, don't blame the abstinence hall for not giving your master face." Of course Long Feiyi knew the sect rules, but he didn't expect these people to investigate Han Yunxi so thoroughly. They even knew she didn't know martial arts. The abstinence hall didn't involve itself in factional disputes. Moreover, Granny Yu was a just and impartial person. Although it wasn't easy to win her over, he couldn't afford to offend her. Moreover, this was the sect's rule. Even Granny Yu had personally stepped in. If he were to openly break the rules, he would be caught red-handed before he even reached the mountain. It wasn't wise to force his way through, much less Han Yunxi. Long Feiyi didn't hesitate to circulate his qi and channel his internal energy into Han Yunxi's body. After all, Han Yunxi wasn't a martial arts wastrel. On the contrary, her talents were twice as good as Duanmu Yao's. She didn't even need to be sealed to receive Tianshan Kenzo's internal energy. As long as she had internal energy, with her talents, he only needed to teach her 1 or 2 sword moves and she'd be able to learn them immediately. Although this would waste a lot of his internal energy, he was willing to risk it all. The crowd was alarmed at the sight. Long Feiyi's actions were too risky. "Fei, have you gone mad? She has no foundation in internal energy at all. Moreover, she hasn't been sealed yet. If you rashly transfer your internal energy to her, you'll definitely go mad." Granny Yu scolded. Only then did Han Yunxi realize what Long Feiyi was planning. She quickly pushed his hand aside. "Long Feiyi, I don't want it." "It's fine." "Be good," Long Feiyi murmured. "I don't want it." Han Yunxi gripped his hand tightly. "Even if I don't go mad, I still don't want you to waste any of your internal energy. I won't allow it." He had a lot to face on this trip to Celestial Mountain. She wouldn't let herself be a burden to him. She was here to help him. They were going to leave the mountain together before mid-autumn. Long Feiyi was about to coax her when Han Yunxi said coldly, "If you insist, I'll wait for you at the foot of the mountain. Trust me, I can walk across." "There's no room for discussion," Long Feiyi's tone was cold. He refused to budge. Han Yunxi took his hand and intertwined her fingers with his. "Long Feiyi, I trust you. I trust that you've never abandoned me in the past, nor will you do so now. Hold my hand and cross the bridge. We'll walk together, all right?" Han Yunxi's eyes held not only determination and stubbornness, but also trust. Long Feiyi could ignore her stubbornness and determination, but he couldn't ignore her trust in him. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'll walk with you. He ignored Granny Yu and Sang Chioying as he carried Han Yunxi and flew across the bridge. Granny Yu didn't expect Han Yunxi to have such courage. Her impression of Han Yunxi had changed a little, but only a little. Men, go and keep an eye on her. Make sure she walks over step by step, Granny Yu said cold. She believed in Long Fei Ye's credibility, but she didn't believe in Han Yunxi. That lass looks so weak that she can't even stand up to a gust of wind. Who knows, she might cry the moment she stands on the bridge. Yes. Several maidservants obeyed and left. Granny Yu landed in the middle of the bridge and waited. Auntie Yu, I'll go take a look too. Sang Chioying hurriedly chased after her. She couldn't wait to see Han Yunxi make a fool of herself. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.